the last and third day of our Africa Regional Forum. So, bienvenue à tous à notre troisième jour de notre forum de Régional d'Afrique. We were going to begin today with Dr. Annette Kirabira from Rahab, Uganda, and she's an amazing clinical psychologist who also works with organizational psychology. She's been working in the anti-trafficking space for a very long time, specifically with the Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons in Uganda, where she's the interim chairperson. And one of the real strengths of Annette's background is her ability to bring together such diverse stakeholders, particularly NGOs, and has really lent her wealth of experience to various trainings in anti-trafficking leadership and counseling. So on to you, Annette.
Wow, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Good to see you, good to be in this space. I'm very excited about this morning and this afternoon's engagement. I just want to briefly unpack a bit of the topic of the importance of survivor engagement in achieving actionable justice. I think for most of us in this place, we've been talking about survivor engagement. The voice has grown, the conversation has evolved, and I'm excited to know that the conversation continues to evolve and to grow and to be informed. Really, I think I have about two thoughts to share. That survivors with their lived experience come in to bring a lot of insight into what will work for them, not only in their needs and services, but also in this area of actionable justice. When we listen to the voices of survivors, not even just listen,
Endeni mkacheze.
get,
Peleka jikoni.
are we all right? Maybe somebody needs to mute. Okay, thank you.
Annette, please unmute.
I'm unmuted. Thank you. Sorry for the technological interruptions. But as I was saying, that most of us are aware that survivors bring a lot of insight. And as we discussed today, and a lot is going to be unpacked, the voice, their participation, their ideas provide a lot of insight for us to eliminate assumptions. Also, one of the other things, they truly understand the consequences of being part of the justice system and process. We might understand processes as allies, as supporting organizations, but they truly know. Examples, if traffickers are in their space, if traffickers are members of their families, what does that mean for them? So their voice, their participation brings in a lot of insight. But also the importance of engaging survivors eliminates the whole idea of tokenism. I think we've talked about tokenism quite a lot. I don't even have to labor it. But it also brings in relevance. Is what is being proposed relevant to the survivor? Because I feel that all of us who are in the anti-trafficking space come with different perspectives when we think about actionable justice. For instance, the perception of law enforcement may be different from the perception of service providers and may also be different from the survivor themselves. I know that most of us who also advocate in law enforcement spaces, what we define as justice might be holding the trafficker accountable. We want to hold the trafficker accountable through the criminal prosecution system. And also we want to connect the survivor to services. But is that exactly what it means for a survivor to access justice or to achieve actionable justice? Yes, I know that most survivors will agree that traffickers need to be held accountable, but justice might mean more than that to a survivor. It may mean connecting them to a space where they can heal. It may mean personal stability, to access resources, to help them heal, to achieve a sense of freedom. So if we don't hear from a survivor, and one of the things we need to remember that even on the journey of accessing, achieving actionable justice, many things can change for a survivor. You can come in with a tunnel vision of saying we want to access justice through the criminal justice system. But then if the survivor is allowed the space to navigate and be flexible, you might find that at different periods of that process, what is actionable justice for them might change. And that's all right. So for us, the other thing also, not to mistake passion and zeal and maybe wanting to engage as a way, we shouldn't mistake it that this survivor is fully prepared to embark on the whole journey. So the importance of having them is to allow them to own the process, in achieving actionable justice. So this morning, and for some of us where it's afternoon, as we engage this topic, actionable justice, and working towards implementing strategies that will support all our efforts in this space of counter-trafficking, we need to ask ourselves, what have we achieved? We have been discussing survivor engagement for a long time. What more needs to be done? I'm hoping we can move forward with these kind of questions. But also the other question I have, do we genuinely want to listen? And when we listen, do we hear? Do we adjust even as we support survivors in achieving actionable justice? Are we dedicating resource to fully equip and empower survivors for autonomy and for meaningful engagement? For me, those are some of the questions. And hopefully, by the time we are done with today's conversations and engagements and all that, we will be informing policy, we'll be informing practice, we will be informing resourcing in this space so that we can fully support our survivors as they engage in achievable justice. So without further ado, I'm excited to hear how all the other topics are going to be unpacked, to listen to the survivors that are going to speak, and to also listen to all the other panelists, even as we continue on this journey of survivor engagement. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for those words, Dr. Kira Vera. Now on to Jacqueline Mwende for our first panel of the day. Now, this is about moving towards actionable justice through effective survivor engagement, lessons learned, and specifically this presentation will be on survivor and government collaborations, lessons learned from the Alliance 8.7 Pathfinder process in the DRC and Kenya. So Jacqueline manages our East and Central Africa region, and she's also a dear friend who's been an incredible attribute to the Free the Slaves team for a very long time. I know I introduced her already, I believe, on the first day, but she has a wealth of experience in this throughout New York and Kenya and throughout the region. And she's someone that can really, really inform this conversation about galvanizing, bringing different groups together. So on to you, Jacqueline.
Before Jacqueline, I just want to interject. We are taking questions again today, so please remember to put your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat, because it gets lost in the chat. So please, for the panelists, please go ahead and place your questions in the Q&A box. Also, we do have a French speaker on this panel, so we are asking for everyone to please find the interpretation button on your bar. It should be near where you have the chat or the breakout rooms. Please find the interpretation button. If you are speaking English and you want to listen to this in English, please choose English. For all of our French speakers, please choose French. You probably don't understand what I'm saying, but
I can do it.
Okay, yes. Choose the language that you want to hear so that we can have a seamless interpretation. So Davina, yes, you can explain in French.
Et merci pour le soutien aussi. Bonjour tous. Les personnes qui parlent français peuvent trouver l'icône d'interprétation sur votre écran où vous pouvez changer la langue de traduction entre anglais à français parce que nous avons une personne qui parle français sur le prochain panel, Madame Agano, je crois, et les autres personnes aussi. Ensuite, autrefois, c'est sur votre écran où il y avait un globe qui dit interprétation. Vous pouvez changer la langue entre anglais et français. Alors, vous pouvez comprendre. Merci à tous. All right, Jacqueline, over to you. Thank you, Dr. Balfour, for the reminders.
Okay, thank you very much for coming today. This is the very first panel for today. And as you have heard and how the key speaker has opened, today is all about survivor engagement. And we are talking about survivor engagement with government, with lessons from Democratic Republic of Congo and Kenya. And with us, we will have Secretary General of Ministry of Labor from Democratic Republic of Congo, the Honorable Donald Bagula, who will be talking about the experience of the government of Congo engaging with the survivors of human trafficking in drafting the roadmap for Alliance 8.7 process. For those who don't know what Alliance 8.7 is, you can go to the website www.alliance8.7.com and you will be able to know much about what we are talking about. And for more bios on the speakers, we will be able to go to the www.freedomfromslavery.org and you can see more on the speakers. Then next we will have Bernadette Agano, who is the coordinator for Free the Slaves in Democratic Republic of Congo, who happened to be part of the committee that was working on the Alliance 8.7 roadmap in DRC. And next we will come to Kenya, where we will have Grace Banya, who is the Chief Technical Advisor for International Labour Organization that has been very instrumental in supporting the government of Kenya, together working with a group of civil society organizations in Kenya, including Free the Slaves, together with the Survivor Network Kenya, to deliver the roadmap for Kenya. Then we will close with Ida Muli, who is the chairperson of the Survivor Network Kenya. So without much ado, I would like to invite the Honorable Donald Bagula from the Labor Ministry in Democratic Republic of Congo. He will be speaking in French. So I would encourage the English speakers to change into interpretation so that you can be able to hear what the Honorable Donald Bagula is saying. So welcome, Donald Bagula.
Bonjour et bon après-midi à tous et à chacun. Je tiens à remercier Free the Slaves d'avoir organisé cet échange, ce forum qui est capital pour que nous puissions échanger nos expériences afin de pouvoir progresser cet agenda de lutte contre le travail des enfants et surtout la prise en compte de survivants dans les mécanismes d'éradication de ces épiphénomènes. Merci Jacqueline pour cette introduction. Effectivement, comme vous l'avez introduit, et je pense que tous les participants savent que depuis 2016, à la suite du programme de développement durable à l'horizon 2030, les dirigeants du monde entier avait lancé l'Alliance 8.7 et ce partenariat mondial qui vise à accélérer l'abolition des pires formes de travail des enfants, l'esclavage moderne, le travail forcé et la traite des êtres humains d'ici 2030. Certains pays de l'Organisation internationale du travail avaient manifesté cet intérêt de devenir pays pionnier pour, dans l'Alliance 8.7. Et la RDC, donc la République démocratique du Congo, mon pays, avait manifesté cet intérêt et le processus a été amorcé pour faire partie de ces mécanismes et qui finalement a été finalisé en 2023. À ce titre, la République démocratique du Congo a élaboré, avec l'accompagnement du BIT, une feuille de route des priorités stratégiques contenant les mesures immédiates et efficaces à entreprendre pour supprimer le travail forcé, mettre fin à l'esclavage moderne et à la traite des êtres humains, interdire et éliminer les pires formes de travail des enfants, y compris le recrutement et l'utilisation des enfants soldats. Et aussi, enfin, mettre fin au travail des enfants sous toutes ses formes. Et en novembre 2022, comme je le disais, avec l'appui de l'Organisation internationale du travail, le ministère de l'Emploi et du Travail a organisé un atelier de toutes les parties prenantes qui a permis d'identifier ces priorités stratégiques et parvenir à adopter avec toutes les parties prenantes une feuille de route contenant toutes ces priorités, toutes ces actions stratégiques devant être mises en œuvre. Et ensuite, cette feuille de route a été transmise au secrétariat de l'Alliance, qui est assumé par le BIT. Et ensuite, en juin 2023, la RDC a été conviée à présenter cette feuille de route au groupe de coordination mondiale, au GSM. Et la RDC a finalement, à partir de là, obtenu son statut de pays pionnier de l'Alliance 8.7. Et au cours de cette réunion du GSM, auquel le Free the Slaves est membre du groupe de coalition mondiale, a participé à cette réunion. Free the Slaves a fait des commentaires sur la feuille de route de la RDC telle que présentée et en termes de recommandations d'enrichissement de la feuille de route et surtout en tenant compte du cadre de responsabilité dont à l'introduction on a parlé de ça et ce cadre de responsabilité en termes de redevabilité, il fallait impliquer absolument dans le processus les survivants comme partie prenante à ces processus d'élaboration et de mise en œuvre de la feuille de route. C'est ainsi que lors de la réunion du groupe de coalition mondiale, il a été recommandé que la RDC puisse travailler avec Free the Slaves pour voir comment tenir compte de ces enrichissements et des aspects tels que évoqués lors de cette réunion. Et c'est ainsi que, avec la direction, la coordination de Free the Slaves, on a organisé des séances de travail qui ont conduit à intégrer les desiderata, les préoccupations de survivants dans la feuille de route. Et c'est ici que je tiens à relever le dynamisme de M. Boukeni dans ce processus qui a permis à ce que nous avons eu des séances d'abord en ligne, comme maintenant là, avec lui, et puis d'autres séances en présentiel, où il a eu même à se déplacer jusque ici à Kinshasa, avec un groupe de survivants, donc et la coordination nationale, Madame Bernadette qui est avec nous dans ce forum. On a eu des séances de travail ici à Kinshasa avec les survivants venant de plusieurs provinces de la République démocratique du Congo. Et nous avons tenu compte de leurs préoccupations, nous les avons écoutées, entendu les préoccupations et on les a intégrées dans la feuille de route. Et ces préoccupations consistaient notamment à la priorité au soutien psychologique des victimes et des survivants, inciter les survivants à se mobiliser et à sensibiliser les communautés locales à la prévention du travail forcé, de l'esclavage moderne, de la traite des êtres humains et du travail des enfants. Mais aussi arriver à renforcer la capacité des survivants à contribuer à la prévention et à la protection des victimes et des communautés affectées. Et enfin, inclure dans le code pénal les infractions pour toute action relative à l'esclavage moderne et ainsi de suite. Alors, la feuille de route de la RDC telle que adoptée par toutes les parties prenantes, notamment le gouvernement, les partenaires sociaux, les organisations de la société civile et les partenaires publics et privés, tenaient compte effectivement des survivants sans ressortir clairement ces concepts, ce qui pouvait paraître comme si cela n'était pas pris en compte ou ignoré. Et c'est ainsi, après que nous avons voulu reformuler les choses, les mettre de manière explicite dans la feuille de route, avec le concours de survivants, donc au cours des réunions que nous avons tenues. Et nous avons immédiatement, après avoir pris en compte ces enrichissements, organisé une réunion d'évaluation à mi-parcours avec toutes les parties prenantes pour prendre compte de préoccupations et les enrichissements qui étaient constitués, qui ont été intégrés entre le groupe des survivants et la task force qui travaille à mon office sur la mise en œuvre de la feuille de route. Alors, lors de l'atelier maintenant d'évaluation à mi-parcours avec toutes les parties prenantes, on a acté les enrichissements tels qu'apportés en prenant compte de cette reformulation, notamment des concepts tels que souhaités par les survivants. Et la task force a finalement intégré tous ces éléments tels que vous l'avez relevé. Tout ça peut être visible sur le site de l'Alliance 8.7. En termes de défis et recommandations, pour qu'est-ce qu'il faut retenir? J'ai retenu que les survivants, non, j'ai retenu, mais aussi la RDC, a retenu que les survivants constituent un atout majeur et une opportunité qui permet au gouvernement d'exploiter leur potentialité afin de participer à la mobilisation communautaire, mais aussi à la construction des connaissances telles que nous les faisons maintenant là, et au changement des attitudes et des comportements. mais aussi au renforcement du rôle des services locaux pour parvenir à lutter contre ces épiphénomènes. Je dis bien l'esclavage moderne, la traite des personnes, le travail forcé et le travail des enfants. Et sur le plan politique, leurs plaidoiries peuvent influencer les changements des politiques publiques, mais aussi la mise en œuvre à tous les niveaux. Il est ainsi recommandé à toutes les organisations de la société civile qui encadrent les survivants et les défenseurs des droits de l'homme de pouvoir faire participer activement les survivants au mouvement contre l'esclavage moderne. À l'échelle communautaire, nationale, tout comme mondiale. Mais aussi parvenir à créer un environnement favorable pour permettre la dénonciation devant conduire à l'esclavage, à abolir l'esclavage moderne dans la société. Mais et pour nous, comme gouvernement, nous, donc la RDC n'aménagera aucun effort au regard de ses engagements dans la feuille de route pour que les survivants ne soient privés de liberté, de parole pour dénoncer toutes ces formes d'abus, mais aussi qu'ils puissent avoir accès à la justice et aux soins non seulement physiologiques, mais aussi psychiques, et qu'ils bénéficient d'une réinsertion sociale adéquate. Et cette lutte, comme vous comprenez, ça nécessite l'implication de toutes les couches sociales, tous les partenaires et surtout les forces vives de la société civile. Je vous remercie pour votre aimable attention. J'espère que j'ai été clair et que j'ai été suivi. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Honorable Donald Bagula, for that really insightful presentation. I think if people have questions, please do put them in the Q&A, and we will be able to address them. I'm moving next to still in DRC to Bernadette Agano, who I had introduced earlier, for her to share a perspective on the process that has just been described previously. And then we know she can now highlight the lesson that she learns from the perspective of, survivors themselves, as well as organization, because she was, working in that capacity, a dual capacity in that committee as a survivor representative, as well as a staff for Free the Slaves. Welcome, Bernadette Agano.
Merci beaucoup, Jacqueline, pour cette belle présentation. J'en suis vraiment honorée et je suis honorée vraiment d'être aujourd'hui ici et pouvoir partager l'expérience que nous avons à travers le gouvernement lors de l'élaboration des recommandations à être inclus dans la feuille de route. Comme son Excellence, Monsieur le Secrétaire général l'a dit, nous avons pu travailler avec d'autres survivants. Nous avons eu une séance de formation, bien sûr, une capacitation pour mettre en place des recommandations pour être inclus dans la feuille de route. Et c'est pour moi vraiment un honneur de faire partie de la task force, qui est un moyen de donner la voix aux survivants, de la reconnaissance de leur engagement et de leur inclusion dans la lutte, mais au-delà de ça, qui est aussi lueur d'espoir pour tous les survivants de la RDC qui se sentaient délaissés et non entendus. Alors aujourd'hui, je vais marteler un peu plus sur l'importance de l'engagement des survivants dans la lutte contre l'esclavage moderne. Vous savez, l'engagement des survivants, c'est-à-dire faire à ce que les survivants soient vraiment partie prenante de la lutte, les inclure vraiment dans la lutte. Et cela aurait, à notre avis, un grand impact. Alors, comme Madame Jacqueline m'a présenté, je représente Free the Slave en RDC, mais aussi, je suis aujourd'hui heureuse et fière de me présenter en tant que survivante aussi de l'esclavage moderne, en quelque sorte. Et je suis heureuse de représenter tous mes frères et sœurs de la RDC. Alors, pour parler de l'impact qu'aurait l'engagement des survivants dans la lutte, alors à travers les témoignages authentiques, le simple fait qu'un survivant puisse être fier de se lever et de parler de son expérience vécue en soi est une sensibilisation. Mais au-delà de ça, il y aura une mobilisation plus efficace des fonds grâce à l'implication des survivants, parce que vous savez, il y a beaucoup de travail qui doit être fait et cela a besoin de fonds. Mais pour les survivants aussi, quel serait leur avantage à être inclus efficacement dans la lutte contre l'esclavage moderne? Il y a leur empowerment, par exemple, leur réintégration sociale, ce qui est vraiment crucial. Mais au-delà de ça, la transformation de leur expérience traumatique en force motrice pour le changement. Et ça, c'est quelque chose qui est très important et qui apporterait vraiment beaucoup de changements. Alors, en termes d'engagement des survivants, Monsieur Dona Bagula en a parlé récemment. Par exemple, je vais donner l'exemple de la RDC, comme ce que je disais récemment, l'inclusion des recommandations des survivants dans la feuille de route pour l'Alliance 8.7 est un exemple parfait de l'engagement des survivants dans la lutte. Parce que du moment où tu t'es dit, moi en tant que survivant, je m'engage aussi à apporter ma pierre pour que ceux qui sont derrière moi ne puissent pas vivre ceci. Et en tout cas, je prierai que ceci soit un modèle pour les autres pays africains, peut-être représentés ici, peut-être d'autres organisations qui ne sont pas en RDC, mais qui sont un peu partout en Afrique, de prendre cet exemple. Et heureusement qu'il y a beaucoup plus de pays en Afrique qui sont en train de vouloir faire partie de l'Alliance 8.7 en étant des pays pionniers de la lutte contre l'esclavage moderne, ce qui est fantastique. Alors, au-delà de ça, quelles seraient les actions à entreprendre? La première des choses, je pense que ce serait reconnaître les survivants comme des experts. Au lieu de les définir à travers leur expérience vécue, utiliser cette expérience vécue et les prendre pour des experts, parce qu'en fait, c'est eux qui savent, comme Madame Annette l'a dit au départ, c'est eux qui, c'est des guides en fait. Ils vont guider même notre lutte, ils vont guider même notre sensibilisation parce qu'ils sont passés par là. Et je pense que ce serait quelque chose de très important. Alors, de ce fait, je pense vraiment que l'engagement des survivants est crucial pour plusieurs raisons. Tout d'abord, les survivants, comme je disais, apportent une perspective unique et authentique qui est essentielle pour comprendre pleinement les dynamiques de la traite des personnes. Leurs témoignages puissants qui sensibilisent le public et mobilisent des fonds de manière efficace. Mais ici, je ne parle pas du témoignage de leur vécu traumatisant, non, mais surtout de leur évolution du statut de victime à celui de survivant, du statut de survivant à celui de survivant leader, du statut du survivant leader à celui d'activiste. Et ces témoignages à lui seul constitueraient une sensibilisation et un exemple à suivre pour d'autres survivants. Alors, les histoires vécues des survivants un impact émotionnel fort, capable de toucher les cœurs et pousser à l'action. En les écoutant, peut-être, les donateurs potentiels peuvent mieux comprendre l'ampleur du problème et être plus enclins à soutenir les initiatives de lutte contre la traite des personnes. Alors, quelles sont les leçons apprises après cette expérience d'engagement de survivants, leur inclusion dans la lutte? Je pense qu'il est temps de cesser de réduire les survivants à leur expérience passée et de commencer à les considérer comme des experts, comme je disais au départ. Et heureusement, des organisations, le gouvernement représenté aujourd'hui est en train de prendre ce pas-là, ce qui est vraiment fantastique. Les survivants sont des exemples vivants de la traite de personnes et leur voix est indispensable pour élaborer des stratégies efficaces de prévention et de protection. Alors, leur engagement aussi est fondamental pour leur guérison et leur réinsertion communautaire. Alors, peut-être parmi les participants ou parmi d'autres personnes, peut-être pourraient poser la question comment inclure les survivants dans la lutte ou comment promouvoir l'engagement des survivants. Ceci peut se faire de plusieurs manières. Cela peut se passer à travers la participation au développement des politiques, comme ce qui a été le cas lors de l'élaboration des recommandations des survivants, en créant des groupes consultatifs composés des survivants pour guider la formulation des politiques et des lois. Ceci est possible. La collaboration des survivants avec les organisations non gouvernementales, peut-être gouvernementales aussi, en invitant les survivants à participer aux discussions et aux négociations avec les décideurs pour s'assurer que les politiques répondent exactement aux besoins réels des victimes. La deuxième des choses, l'engagement des survivants pourrait aussi passer par la formation et le développement des compétences. Ceci peut passer par les programmes de leadership, c'est-à-dire offrir des formations en leadership, en plaidoyer ou en communication pour que les survivants puissent devenir des porte-parole efficaces. Ceci peut se passer à travers des ateliers de formation, c'est-à-dire organiser des ateliers pratiques sur des compétences spécifiques comme la prise de parole en public, la gestion des projets, l'organisation communautaire. Au-delà de ça, ceci peut se passer à travers la création des réseaux des survivants. Ceci pour établir des réseaux ou des groupes de soutien où les survivants peuvent partager leur expérience, se soutenir mutuellement et collaborer sur des initiatives de plaidoyer. C'est vraiment très intéressant. Mais au-delà de ça, permettre la participation des survivants dans des conférences et des forums comme ceci où les survivants pourraient partager leurs perspectives, pourraient apprendre des autres, pourraient apprendre des nouvelles ou des innovations en matière de traite d'êtres humains et cela pourrait leur aider dans leur activisme, dans leur activité, dans leur communauté et ce serait vraiment intéressant. Mais au-delà de tout, nous pensons aussi, d'ailleurs c'est l'une des premières des choses, permettre aux survivants d'avoir accès à l'emploi et aux opportunités économiques, c'est-à-dire embaucher les survivants dans des organisations de lutte contre la traite des personnes, y compris des postes de gestion, de conseil, de sensibilisation, de consultance, parce que vous savez, comme je le disais dans un des webinaires où j'ai participé récemment, ceci peut arriver à n'importe qui. Ceci peut arriver à n'importe qui. N'importe qui peut être victime de ces exactions, d'où vraiment le besoin de sensibilisation. Et au-delà de ça, au-delà d'être survivant, on peut avoir des capacités qu'on peut mettre au profit de la lutte. Et je pense que c'est quelque chose qui serait très intéressant. Alors, au-delà de ça, il serait aussi bien de mettre en place des programmes de réinsertion, c'est-à-dire de programmes de formation professionnelle et d'emploi pour aider les survivants à réintégrer la société et obtenir une indépendance économique pour que ces victimes ne soient pas révictimisées. Parce que certains, la plupart des facteurs, l'un des grands facteurs favorisant l'esclavage moderne, la traite des personnes, c'est pauvreté et le manque d'indépendance économique. Alors, si on touche aussi à ce côté-là, je pense que ce serait quelque chose qui pourrait prévenir la révictimisation des victimes ou des survivants. Alors, en dernier, comme je disais, considérer les survivants en tant qu'experts vis-à-vis de leur expérience vécue, mais au-delà de ça, donner un soutien psychologique et émotionnel lorsque vous êtes amené à travailler avec les survivants. Car, vous savez, la guérison des traumatismes est un processus et parfois long. Du coup, fournir un accès à des services de counseling, de soutien émotionnel pour aider les survivants à surmonter leur traumatisme et participer à la lutte serait vraiment quelque chose de formidable. Mais au-delà de ça, créer des espaces sûrs où les survivants peuvent exprimer leurs idées et leurs expériences sans crainte de jugement, de stigmatisation, car ceci est quelque chose que parfois il arrive que nous vivons au jour. Et ce serait bien que cela soit pris en compte. Mais au-delà de tout, nous qui sommes appelés à être en contact direct avec les survivants pendant leur inclusion ou leur engagement dans nos organisations, dans nos structures, c'est bien d'apprendre des approches trauma-informed, comme on dit, des approches trauma-informées pour éviter une rétraumatisation de la victime au quotidien. Donc, inclure les survivants de manière significative renforce non seulement la lutte contre l'esclavage moderne, mais contribue également à la guérison et à l'autonomisation de ceux qui sont affectés. Alors, en reconnaissant leur expertise et en leur offrant des plateformes pour s'exprimer et agir, nous pouvons avancer ensemble vers un avenir sans esclavage moderne. Je vous remercie et je pense que je vais m'arrêter là. S'il y a des questions, je serai ravie de répondre. Merci.
Thank you so much, Benedict, and thank you so much, the government of DRC for opening this space for survivors to be able to be part of these processes and giving them a space not just to be, recipients of services from the government, but also to be advisors to the government and provide expertise. So with the leadership of the Honorable Donat Bagula, we would like to give special appreciation for Democratic Republic of Congo for being the first country to set the blueprint for the engagement of survivors in high-profile policy decisions like the Alliance 8.7. And just to say, DRC is actually the first country in the membership of the Alliance 8.7 to have survivors contribute to their roadmap, to their country roadmap. And then following closely by Kenya. I think we borrowed from there. And they say some of the Kenyans came from DRC, so it makes sense there. So thank you so much for that. I see there's a lot of comments and on the chat box about this presentation. People are really happy. They have been inspired by your presentation, Benedict, as you can see. And there are also some questions in French, Benedict, which you will be able to answer after this session, after I move to Kenya. And I give this opportunity to the ILO Chief Technical Advisor, Grace Banya, to tell us, because ILO has been very instrumental in supporting this process, both in financing and also in technical support for the process in Kenya, and also opening up the space and supporting the government of Kenya together with Free the Slaves to have survivors contributing meaningfully in the process of Alliance 8.7 Pathfinder process. So thank you so much and welcome. And after she is done, Ida, you can quickly jump in after she is done, and so that we can have that seamless flow of the perspective from Kenya. Thank you, Madam Grace Banya, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's a pleasure to be in this space. Thank you so much, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to represent the ILO.
Check your mic.
I am unmuted. I think can you hear me?
Check your mic. We can't hear yet.
We can
Oh.
hear.
I'm
I can
on.
hear
I'm
her.
on, Jacqueline.
Okay.
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Jacqueline cannot hear me. But anyhow, thank you so much for having me and for giving us the opportunity to be in this space. First and foremost, I would like to really thank Free the Slaves through you, Bukeni, Jacqueline, Ruth, for having reached out to us as we're beginning the process in Kenya. We are most grateful for your support, both technically and for guiding us. I think our role as the ILO, as most of you know, that we are one of the oldest UN agency, our role is to really support both technically and where possible financially. And that's what we've done to this process so far. So I'm most thankful to you, Free the Slaves, for having come on board at a very opportune time. As you heard from Jacqueline, my name is Grace Banya. I manage a regional program that covers Uganda and Kenya. And we mainly are looking at the elimination of child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. And obviously, the modern slavery comes in because of the Alliance 8.7 agenda. As the topic for this afternoon is to share experiences from what we've learned during this process, and more so moving the agenda of the Alliance 8.7 movement. And so my presentation today will give you a bit of background on where we are at and where we started from developing Kenya's roadmap to the Alliance 8.7. I'll go in to discuss the process itself and where we are at and what is planned moving forward. So Aline, if you could move to the next slide. Just to give you a little bit of statistics, we are speaking about 160 million children in child labor globally. That's as per the 2022 Global Estimates report that the ILO publishes every 5 years. And then 50 million people are in modern slavery globally. And for us in the ILO, we think even children themselves are actually in modern slavery. When children are in the worst forms of child labor, it is a thin line between being in modern slavery, being in child labor, worst forms of child labor, which also intersects with human trafficking. Move on, Aline. So what is this that we're talking about? The Alliance 8.7 comes from the Sustainable Development Goal number 8 that talks about decent work. And here it speaks about promotion of sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full productive employment, and decent work for all. So the Alliance 8.7 comes from the target number 7, which is the next slide, Aline, if you can move. Target 8.7, it's really emphasizing that you need to effectively put in place measures to eradicate forced labor, end modern slavery and human trafficking, and secure prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor, which include, among other things, recruitment and use of child soldiers. And the target to end this is 2025, back to the slide, Aline, to the use of children in armed conflict as child soldiers, but also the child labor in its worst forms. And when we talk about the worst forms of child labor, there is a thin line for children being in slavery and, you know, and having been trafficked, either for commercial sex exploitation, when we talk about child marriages, when you talk about teenage pregnancies, the worst forms of child labor. So the target, as you may all know, we are now at 2024. In a year to come, will we have ended or eliminated child labor in its worst forms, or even prohibited the use of children as child soldiers? Let's move on. Aline. So what is the Alliance 8.7? In short, we are talking about a global movement of partnerships that foster multi-stakeholder collaboration to support governments to achieve Target 8.7 for the Africa Agenda for 2030. The Alliance 8.7 is expected to promote action to eradicate forced labor, modern slavery, human trafficking, and child labor. So getting alliances globally and in East Africa, where we are with our partners, Free the Slaves, and other civil society organizations to promote accelerated action through research, data collection, knowledge sharing, and making sure that the governments move the political will, the resources that are required so that we can bring an end to these vices. And then lastly, to drive this movement by leveraging action at all levels. So we are talking about involvement of survivors. Are they in this whole process? Can we put them at the center stage? And that's what we've been doing in Kenya. So I'll later on share our experiences, what we've done, where we are, and where we expect to move. Move on, Aline, next. So the Alliance Pathfinder process or Pathfinder country process it allows a country to demand, actually it's a whole demand-driven process, to commit themselves and show it through action to be a member of the Alliance 8.7 like-minded countries. So it is an open status for every country that is willing and able, because it's not enough to be willing, but you have to also have the ability to move the process, but also sustain the process. And so nobody, even us ourselves from the UN or any other organizations, coalitions, can force any country to be a Pathfinder country. There has to be that demand, there has to be the willingness and resources to move the process. So when a country is actually allowed in, then they get the status of a Pathfinder country. Let's move, Aline. Next. So the Alliance Pathfinder countries, I think you jumped too fast, Aline, if we could move backwards. Yes, so the Alliance 8.7 Pathfinder membership brings together like-minded countries that are supporting an inclusive and sustainable process that showcase progress and successful interventions, both at regional, international, and at national and country levels through this platform. They're supposed to also share good practices and knowledge and expertise. And I'm saying all this because Kenya is not yet a Pathfinder country, but this is what is required from the perspective of being a Pathfinder country. And then they serve as examples to drive change by showing progress and successful interventions, but they also receive technical expertise from the Global Coalition and also the regional like-minded countries through knowledge sharing workshops and experiences, but also they get support as they move, progressively towards the target now that is 2025, which I believe is going to be moved forward, because at the rate where we are and with the statistics as I shared globally, the sub-Saharan Africa, we are not doing so well. And therefore, there's need to even push for more countries in Africa to join this membership. Next, Aline. So where are we in Kenya and what have we done so far? So the quest for Kenya's admission to the Alliance 8.7 Pathfinder country status started early in the year 2020. There was a discussion that was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Things slowed down. The process could not move further. We were not able to meet physically, as you know, how it affected all countries globally. But then it picked up again in 2023, as you can see from the diagram there. So Kenya submitted its letter to join the Alliance 8.7 in early the first quarter of 2023. In April, the same year, we had our first meeting where we had a huge support from the Free the Slaves, and we're very, very thankful to you, Jacqueline, and your team, Bukeni, who also came on board. And we've been working with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, with our social partners, the workers' organization, and the employers, but also the civil society movement in Kenya. In quarter one of 2024, the teams were divided into clusters, and they started the discussions along the 4 areas of focus. That's child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery. So we started the discussions alongside the 4 clusters. And then we held our first stakeholder workshop in the second quarter. And along the way, we have had a lot of participation from the civil society organizations, including the Survivor Network for Kenya, where we've had very, very exciting interventions from the survivors themselves. And we've learned quite a lot because they've been put at center stage. They brought in their energies, they put together the process. They are leading the clusters, some of the clusters. And we've learned a lot from just listening to their perspectives and how they want to see Kenya's roadmap going. And I can tell you, there is no country that is going to do it alone from the government perspective, because it's civil society organizations that do the work on the ground, that provide services for the survivors, but also they have all that we need and all it takes for the policy makers to actually fashion interventions that will suit their needs. And we are finding that the voice of survivors is so critical. It is so critical at all stages because they're able to shape policy, but also guide intervention that will suit the needs of the survivors. I was listening to the earlier speaker from Uganda, my sister Annette, and I couldn't agree with you more, because survivors' engagement does really give insight in what they want, and not only how policy should actually go for them, and actionable justice. I mean, for me, just listening to you, I just got very, very excited that if we are going to move this process forward, we really need them at every step of the way. Aline, can you move next? So the status so far is that the clusters have met. We've gone through their drafts. 3 out of the 4 briefs we discussed, I think 2 weeks ago. We are left to review one of the briefs, and we are finding that the input that is coming from all levels, both government, the workers' organizations, the employers, as well as the survivors and the civil society organization, is really, really high quality input. And we've now agreed on what Kenya's format for the roadmap will look like. Of course, learning from other countries. I think there are 2 countries in the region, that's Uganda, Malawi, which are closer to what happens in Kenya in terms of policy interventions as well as what actually the survivors are going through and those who are victims have experienced. Can we move, Aline, next? So the next steps, I think going forward, is that we will finalize the roadmap. As I said, in August, we have several convenings. As the ILO, we've been supporting financially to convene the groups, as well as provide technical expertise. So we'll move each of the clusters and convene them to review the final review of the clusters as we develop them to form, part of the roadmap. There will be editorial teams looking at each of the clusters, and we have the Office of the Attorney General going to help us so that it can read the legal language that it's supposed to be. And then finally, we submit the roadmap to the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection as the requirement in Kenya. Any official legal document has to be taken through public participation so that the public know what Kenya is committing itself to, and so under buy-in. So there's a lot of buy-in and having inclusivity at all levels. We hope that by September it will be adopted by the cabinet. As you may all well know, there's a new cabinet in formation. We hope they would have settled down, and then we can have it as one of the first documents that they will look at. And then we start engaging with the Alliance 8.7 Monitoring and Review Committee. And finally, Kenya, hopefully by November, the Global Coordinating Group can accept Kenya to be a Pathfinder country officially. I think the level at which we are as a country is that on paper, we've been accepted, but we have to fulfill all the requirements, and the roadmap being one of them, so that then we can have the final stamp of acceptance to this movement. Next, Aline. We can skip that. I think that's not important for this meeting. Even that one, let's skip it and we go to the next. So just to quickly, as I wind up, to share the lessons learned. I think throughout this process, we've learned that there's a very, very critical need for effective stakeholder mapping and engagement across all the 4 thematic areas. And this is to ensure there's relevance of issues and stakeholder buy-in. We did start with this, but progressively we realized that along the way, for us, for the Kenya roadmap and the program for the Alliance 8.7 to be really effective, it will have to be an all-inclusive process. Secondly, that leadership at all levels is very, very critical. The Ministry of Labor, obviously, by default, they are the ones that lead the process, and we knew that from the very beginning. As you may be aware, for us at the ILO, we work in a tripartite fashion. I mean, we are invited to be in Kenya or any country at the invitation of the government. So we are not implementers. And so we recognize that the work is done by government, and our mother ministry is Labor Ministry, but also that they work with the workers' organizations and the employers' organizations. So we respect that tripartite structure, and that is what takes the leadership. Secondly, we also recognize that we have a role to play to provide technical expertise together with the Free the Slaves. We were very, very thankful that they came on board and have guided us throughout the process. So kudos to you, Jacqueline, and the team, Bukeni, Ruth, and all of your colleagues. Then the thematic cluster leads have provided thematic expertise, and it's very important to recognize what they bring on board. each of the clusters know what they are doing. They are bringing in the process what is on the ground. That has to be acknowledged and also have its place, very, very central place in the whole process. And we, of course, have provided convening as our role, and we've taken it very well, and we'll continue to support the process. Okay, can we move down? Aline? Yes, some other lessons learned is that the country roadmaps should be structured to suit the local context. I mean, I can say that over and over again. If you think you can sit and put something together and you think it will work, no. You must have the context at all the levels, and where possible, even subnational levels, if it was possible, to pick their perspective. But in most cases, because the CSOs bring in that bottom-up approach, we're able to fit in what others are thinking at all levels. The technical capacity and expertise also is strengthened all through the process. I think there's cross-learning at all levels of the process, and that should be acknowledged and actually documented. For the national frameworks and the steering committees and reporting for the Alliance 8 points, those have to be kept very, very closely at the forefront to know that whatever is being put in the roadmaps and national plans are those things that countries are going to be able to report on. Because there's no point being so ambitious and setting high targets. So when the time comes to report, then we are not able to report. So that is something we've learned, and we've corrected ourselves along the way to be able to have very realistic targets that the country would be able to report on. Aline, can you move a little? Still the same slide, but the last, yes, the last number 6, I'm not able to read it. If you can put it up, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm not able to see that. It's my presentation here. So government commitment, yes, the funding of the whole process. Whereas the ILO and other partners can come on board and provide resources, I think that it's critically important. And that's a lesson we've learned, not only in supporting this process, but other processes. The government's commitment is fundamental, but also they need to be very committed to the end. I mean, not just have the country status as a pathfinder, but also be sure to continue and continue convening and getting the partners together, particularly the survivors, as it's a government's role to provide services to the survivors, to provide actionable justice, to ensure they are involved at all levels of developing processes, but also implementing processes, because it's them that need support, and also the commitment to stop modern slavery, to stop trafficking, human trafficking, to stop child labor by providing decent work for all, by providing a place for children in school, by providing employment for the youth and women, and all the health services and whatever else that the citizens need. So I want to thank you again for listening. I kind of marathoned through. We are very thankful to be in this space, and we continue to look forward to be part of this process. Again, thank you so much, Free the Slaves, for allowing us to be part of you and part of the process. I think the ILO remains ready to work with you and especially the survivors, and give them their rightful place in this process. Thank you again, and happy to be here. Back to you, Jacqueline. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Madam Grace Mbanya, for that insightful presentation on the process of Alliance 8.7 and the steps that Kenya has taken and where we are. So I think that is would be a good lesson for other Pathfinder countries that are in this space that has not been able to include survivors in their roadmaps, as well as some that have not joined. For example, in the Southern Africa, part of Africa, we do not have a country that is a Pathfinder country. But in East, Central, North Africa, we have countries, and most of the participants here represented the countries are members of the Alliance. So thank you so much, Madam Grace, for that. So now we are moving to Ida Muli. Ida Muli is the chairperson of the Survivor Network Kenya, which has been very, very active in this process. And not only this process, also in other processes similar to this one, like the Universal Periodic Review, and also other processes, internal processes, national processes. So Ida will give us a perspective on the involvement of the Survivor Network in the process and the lessons that they have learned as a result, and also the experience, and also what would be the call for action for other actors in this space who want to be involved in the process of Alliance 8.7 or other processes that are similar. Welcome, Ida. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable government representatives in the forum, International Labour Organization Kenya, Free the Slaves, esteemed members of the Alliance 8.7 Secretariat, dedicated colleagues, migrant workers, civil society organizations, valued allies, and survivors. Good morning, good afternoon from Kenya, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ida Muli, as you've heard from Jacqueline. I'm the chairperson of the Survivor Network Kenya. I'm a survivor of forced labor and human trafficking. And I was also part of the Alliance 8.7 process and the team that was leading in the recommendations and research, and also sitting in the government meetings to do the Pathfinder status for Kenya to become one of the member countries that will be doing the decent work for the Alliance 8.7. Yeah. I am here today not just as a survivor, but as an active participant in the roadmap process in Kenya aimed at eradicating forced labor, modern slavery, and human trafficking. Being part of this journey has been both challenging and enlightening. As a survivor, my involvement in the Alliance 8.7 process in Kenya has taught me to be profound impact of having a voice in the rooms where decisions are made. It's such a great honor for survivors to feel special and appreciated whenever they are invited to go and make decisions for a country. I don't take it for granted. Our experiences, as harrowing as they are, provide invaluable insights that can drive effective and sustainable change. I learned that when survivors are included in these processes, policies move from being well-intentioned to being sharply targeted and truly transformative. For organizations working with survivors, I want to underscore the importance of empowerment. Our stories are not just tales of sorrow, but of resilience and strength. To harness this strength, organizations must focus on creating platforms that address survivors' immediate needs and empower us to be leaders and advocate in our communities. Recently, I attended a global migrant workers forum that involved migrant workers from across the globe together with survivors so that our voices may be also heard globally. So I can see myself as someone who's gonna be great in future, maybe sitting in one of the offices that are making decisions through the experience and expertise that you are learning as survivors through survivor inclusion. It's about shifting the narrative from victimhood to leadership. Government, on their part, must recognize and support the unique positions of survivors. We are not merely beneficiaries of policies. We are key stakeholders. We can provide critical insights that can lead to better outcomes. Government should provide safe, inclusive, and accessible mechanism for survivor engagement. This means not only inviting us to the table, but also actively listening and integrating our feedback into policy frameworks and implementation of strategies. In conclusion, the lessons we carry as survivors and the insights we offer are invaluable resources in the fight against human trafficking and forced labor. It's crucial for all stakeholders, from international organizations to local CSOs and governments, to foster an environment where survivors are heard. By doing so, we honor the experiences of those who have suffered and pave way for truly inclusive and effective roadmap toward eradicating those heinous crimes. And for me, I'm so grateful for always being participating in this kind of forums, because before we were not even public speakers, but through the experience and inclusion, we've gained courage to also do the research, do the recommendations together with big people in the government. And it's not by our own power, but it's because of the experiences that we lived in the past that taught us the lessons. And when we were going through these challenges, we knew that we would come to our countries and be the people who will be doing these discussions in the tables with high-profile people. And we truly feel honored as survivors when you are included in this policy making and decision making for a country. And also the government now knows what happens there abroad or in the countries of destination where people travel for labor, for country can either send us for labor so that they can get remittance from the money that we send back home. But now we've known our rights, and we've been learning every day from others in the meetings and in the forums that you are attending. And I'm so grateful to Free the Slaves and ILO for giving us the platform to sit and discuss these decisions. And we are not little people, but you're also great people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ida, for that presentation. And thank you, the panelists, for that presentation. I can see there were some questions which have been answered on the chat. But if you still have questions, please keep typing them in the question and answer session. Now, I would like to pass the baton to Davina. And thank you so much, the panelists, for that presentation. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, speakers. This was an amazing panel, and I think it was very insightful, especially with the progress that's been made in the DRC and Kenya. Our next presentation is on survivor engagement policy research, and it'll be led by Blaise Sonia Adu Gyamfi from Free the Slaves in Ghana. Again, our team has been just incredible in terms of our regional representation and our ability to kind of pull a lot of these stakeholders together. And Sonia is the Monitoring, Learning, and Evaluation Associate at Free the Slaves, and she's based in Ghana. And she's also worked as a senior research assistant with the Center for Migration Studies at the University of Ghana. And her blend of policy-driven research is a perfect area of experience to lead this panel. So thank you. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you, Davina. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers till now. That was great and insightful to hear. Okay, so our session would be focusing on survivor engagement policy research. It is very relevant that research explores the survivor engagement practices of key counter-trafficking organizations, investigates the survivors' own assessment of their participation in trafficking movement, anti-trafficking movement, and also proceed to offer a series of actionable recommendations on how inclusive engagement of survivors can become more standardized and ultimately more beneficial. With this said, our panelists have diverse and rich background, and I will start by introducing them. We have Dr. Dorothy Haskam, who works with Heart Kenya, where she participates in research and closely cooperates with survivor advocates and leaders. She's a human rights activist, an advocacy and communication professional, and a systemic consultant and coach. We can read more about all our panelists' bio on the page, the forums page. We will also have Wanja Patricia Kimani. She is a solution-oriented author, researcher, and survivor leader based in Kenya. Her activism has been instrumental in various organizations focusing on counter-trafficking in persons, and especially as a committee member and cluster lead in Kenya's process of becoming a Pathfinder country in accordance with Alliance 8.7. And finally, we have Shivan Pavin, better known as Shivana. She stands as a prominent figure in Uganda's LBQ movement. Her unwavering dedication is evident in her roles as a passionate queer Ugandan activist, feminist, survivor leader advocate, and a research consultant deeply engaged in the battle against human trafficking. So our panelists would give a presentation of a research undertaken in East and Central Africa on the topic survivors and organizations working together against human trafficking. All three panelists will do this together, but we would have Dr. Dorothy starting with the introduction and methodology. Wanja would then come in with the findings, and Dorothy would focus more on quantitative and organizational overview. Then we'd have Shivana also talk about the recommendations. And as the presentation is going on, should you have questions, please feel free to type into our Q&A box, and we would respond during Q&A sessions, or even if there isn't enough time, they will do well to respond. At this point, Dr. Dorothy, I would hand over to you to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for this wonderful introduction. I'm starting with the question that is the question of all presentations. Can you hear me? Okay, I see you nodding. That's great. So first, let me say that I am really happy and honored to be here today. Thank you very much for the invitation. And you've already given a scope of the research that we want to introduce. Let me say that this research was initiated by Free the Slaves, and then Heart Kenya, a Nairobi-based NGO that focuses on human trafficking, was invited to come in, and then we've been on this journey together. For Heart Kenya, let me also say it's an NGO that works across all the 4 Ps. Protection is our core focus, but also prevention, supporting prosecution, and policy and partnerships, which brings us here today. And it's been a great journey, this research. So I also want to thank the previous speakers, because they have made so clear why survivor engagement and inclusion is so important. And it's also so inspiring to see how it's now going up to the state level. However, even though it's now reaching the state level, which we are very happy it does, it is still very much on the cooperation with civil society organization that survivor engagement and inclusion often starts. So basically, from what Madame Bernadette has said before, this sort of builds on everything she has said and trying to break it down to a practical approach. So the findings that we are presenting now, they can be understood first as an encouragement to survivors who want to join the movement to see what they are entitled to expect from organizations they join. And of course, we have a whole set of recommendations that should guide and inspire organizations who want to embark on this way and just take the next step. This will be a lot for the next 30 minutes. However, you can download this research on the website either of Free the Slaves or Heart Kenya. There is the whole research. I do encourage you to actually download it. And for those who want to get real practical, real fast, there's also an executive summary that gives you all the recommendations. And there are many because it covers really a broad range. However, the most important thing here is to really take it to the next step. So don't be discouraged by the number of recommendations, but just look where your organization is at the moment and what is the next step that you can take. And maybe someone can share the links in the chat for participants to download it. Now allow me to put on my clock so I don't take too much time. We want to have more time for the recommendations and the findings from interviews. Aline, thank you. So we can move to the first slide, please. So yes, so for the methodology of the research, we have, of course, been looking at secondary sources, but the main part here is that it was interviews with 18 activists with lived experience across Central and East Africa who are cooperating with organizations in their fight and engagement against human trafficking. And I'm very happy to see a lot of the people who participated in the research, either as interviewees or as researchers, are on the panel, are on panels today or among the participants. And so those were 101 interviews that have definitely gained from the fact that we always had a staff researcher and a researcher with lived experiences doing these interviews. And this has contributed a lot to the quality, to the atmosphere of the conversation and the quality of the answers we got. And for me, actually, these interviews and the answers are the core of the whole research. However, we also have organizations, those that cooperated with the activists, advocates, and leaders who were interviewed, assessing their own survivor engagement, which has given us an idea on where we are starting. And then we had a validation workshop with a lot of participants, interviewees, and researchers. And this also has contributed a lot to making the recommendations more precise, also more bold. And I think it's important here to see that we got more precise and bold recommendations to organizations in the moment where there were a lot of activists with lived experience in a room. So in one-on-one, everyone was very sort of still polite and a bit cautious, but in this room with everyone discussing and getting more ideas, recommendations really, really gained also in urgency. Thank you, Aline. Next slide, please. So I have already sketched out that we cannot underestimate how important it was that we had researchers with lived experience present through the whole process. And also their role has evolved over time. And we try to make sure that they engagement is meaningful from the start by really looking into training and also like what is needed for them to take up responsible roles, not only in the interview, but also in the data collection, data analysis, and then up to the validation workshop and the research. Next slide, please. For the trauma-informed approach that was followed throughout, it was much more than just sort of having a psychologist on standby on every interaction. Of course, we benefited from the trust relationship that interviewees already had established with their organizations. And it was the organizations that sort of made the bridge between the researchers and the survivor advocates and leaders. And part of the training for all interviewers also was being aware of stabilization techniques and also being sensitive about any external signs of an interviewee maybe feeling uncomfortable. However, as I said, the atmosphere really was influenced by this being very much a discussion among active survivors. So next slide, please. And then after the interview, the validation workshop really helped us as researchers to understand better and being more precise about the recommendations. Next slide. And I think it is here that I would like to hand over to Wanja Patricia to take us through the findings from the interviews with survivor advocates and survivor leaders.
Thank you, Dr. Dorothy. So my name is Wanja Patricia. I'm going to turn on my camera just briefly so that you see who's talking. I don't know if you can see me. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm a survivor leader and I conducted the interviews alongside my colleagues, Shivana and Brenda, who is not part of this panel today. And yeah, we learned a lot, as my colleague Ida has said, about how we can be professional in the space. So we did learn on how we can stabilize the interviewees, and at the same time, I didn't know that some of these experiences would actually reflect my very own. But from what we learned, we tried not to ask leading questions. It was a very professional exercise that I don't take for granted. So the findings here, I will present the thematic areas that came about. And the first one is the role of lived experience in survivor engagement, where we found out that the survivor advocates and leaders were kept motivated in the counter trafficking space based on what they went through, and meaning that most of them, from what they said, they did not know much about trafficking until it happened to them. So they were using their lived experience to warn others and to create awareness. As you can see from the transcripts down below in blue quoted, if you have been through something, you'll be able to understand somebody who is going through what you went through. And yeah, the transcript goes on to say it's a different kind of passion. It gives you a kind of joy because we are all working towards the same goal. Yeah, that's on the lived experience that survivors have come together and they find out that they have somewhat similar experiences, and they find out that they're actually all working together to create their awareness. Next slide, please, Aline. The next theme area is prior activism. Some of the interviewees quoted that they had been engaged in other human rights activism spaces before these anti-human trafficking organizations noticed them, or before these activists or survivor leaders and survivor advocates came to know that there are organizations that actually work against human trafficking. So in most cases, organizations did not initiate the activism of survivors. Yes, so those are the people who are actually doing the activism before. There seem to be less ways to engage with persons who are not yet experienced social justice advocates. What this point implies is that it was easier to push someone into any activism activity if they have been in prior activism, maybe campaigns, road shows or things like that, if they have already been in activism. But for people who did not have that prior experience, then it might require a little bit of training. Next slide, please. This one was a very controversial point, and every time we talk about it, it always brings up questions. Most people, a great majority of the people we interviewed reported that the first activity they took against human trafficking was individually sharing their personal lived experiences, like in the case of the prior activism, where people were doing the activism by creating awareness and talking about human rights, migrant rights, and all that. And some of them were actually engaged in media interviews to just share their experiences about what they went through. But the controversy comes in that the interviewees, not all of them were comfortable with having to share their experiences, and the organizations actually agreed that there should be alternative paths to actively join the movement without survivors having to share their stories. The other controversy is that most of these organizations, or all organizations, were having a concern, because how can you tell that somebody is a survivor unless they share their story? But the kind of sharing the lived experience that was being focused on here is having to come out to the public and share your story, and the survivor having to share their experience with the organization, the particular organization that has the potential to help them. That is not what is being talked about here. But in case you have a question regarding this point, we will respond accordingly. Yeah, so next slide, please. The other point is finances and employment. This question was about barriers to engagement, because in as much as organizations want to engage survivors, there are barriers to engagement, and one of them is the financial aspect. So many of the interviewees who are actually survivors noted that, or pointed out that financial worries are a crucial issue to how they engage in the organization's activities, in the awareness creation and all that, because the organization might be requiring survivor's intervention, but you find that the survivor is not able to get to the particular location because they don't have the transport, or maybe they cannot participate in a forum like this one because they don't have internet or things like that. So some of them would have wanted to be active, but the financial bit was a great barrier. Several interviewees said that they hoped for regular employment or financial compensation when they started cooperating with the organization. Yes, like on the same point of prior activism, there are those that were already engaged elsewhere. So when they got to the organization, they hoped that they would be engaged on a permanent capacity. And this person says organizations need to increase capacity building and inclusive employment, not only give opportunities for survivors to apply, but employ them and then build their capacities. That was on capacity building, where organizations need to, or rather this person was suggesting that organizations need to recognize their lived experiences, expertise, and in other places or in other interviews, still within this scope, the interviewer said they would prefer if the employment regulations are a bit loosened, or they are more accommodative of survivors' lived experiences. This other one says, when I was called for an engagement, I couldn't make it because I did not have transport to come. Yeah, same thing with that's just the emphasis for the barrier on engagement. Next slide, please. The other thematic area was learning, qualifications, and personal growth. When asked about their motivation of engaging with organizations, many mentioned the benefits of learning opportunities and chance for personal growth. Yes, and most of these interviewees are people who have attended several trainings by Heart Kenya and Free the Slaves. And those are the learning opportunities they could be alluding to. They show high appreciation for formal capacity building through workshops, but also for the learning opportunities and social benefits that arise from networking, traveling to different communities, and engaging in new interactions. Yes, that's on the workshops that have been conducted again by Free the Slaves and Heart Kenya, that have given the survivors from various parts of the country and from various parts of East and Central Africa to come together and network and exchange ideas and just create long-lasting relationships. This person says, I learned a lot. The organization was also making me a leader, seeing something in me that I can do, and they are helping me do it. I feel like I was empty before and now I am full. The other person says, I would like to be taken to university to advance my knowledge so that I can come back and work better. At that point, brings out the aspect of the employment expectations also, whereby survivors maybe are not employed by the organizations because, according to some organizations, they don't have the university qualifications or things like that. And I think it will come out in the recommendations, whereby some organizations might be forcing or might be pushing the survivors to get into business, but the particular survivor actually just wants to finish their degree. Maybe they had some prior learning. So I think it will come out in the recommendation in the slides thereafter. Next slide, please. The other thematic area was survivor networks. Meeting other survivors is one of the most powerful means to uphold commitment and motivation. Whenever the encounters with other survivors are mentioned, it is without any exception in a positive, often enthusiastic way. I can agree to this, not just as an interviewer, but also as a survivor and survivor leader. Yes, there is a way when the organizations are having an engagement, when you feel like you're going to meet with other survivors, you just know it's going to be epic. But yeah, I am glad that I'm not the only one that feels this way. And sorry, don't mistake me. I was an interviewer, so I had no input whatsoever on what was being said here, but that was just my perspective because I have been engaged by organizations so many times. So this person says it's impressive and encouraging because we all work together, share our various experiences, and we are trying to help the society not to fall victim of such things. Yeah. Next slide, please. The other theme area is the mental health support. Many interviewers confirmed the need for psychosocial support, not only after the trafficking experience, but even when the direct assistance is completed and reintegration is achieved, including necessity for this while active in the movement. Yes, I remember one of the interviewers saying that after assistance is provided and somebody might be very vocal, very active outside creating awareness, but there are always episodes that remind you, that trigger you. So this point shows clearly why there is need for continuous psychological support. Because of the trauma and the triggering and all that. However, according to their experience, the need for free and accessible psychological support exceeds the availability. So some of them were saying that the available psychosocial support in the organization is not only for the survivors, but it is also available for staff and everybody who is involved or affiliated with the organization, the particular organization at whatever capacity, and that's really commendable. And this person says, they helped me a lot in healing, in discovering myself, discovering my worth, and understanding myself more, not blaming myself for what happened. I just felt appreciated, respected, and understood. Next slide, please. The other aspect was the security and safety, whereby some of the interviewers were saying there are so many security risks involved in activism, especially if you are really vocal and you are a leader and you're very charismatic. So there has been risks of getting into trouble with the government, getting into trouble with the communities. Yeah, so yes, these people were saying that there needs to be support in terms of security, such that when activists are doing their things out there, like things related to activism and creating awareness, they are not threatened in any way, they are not harmed in any way. So this person says, prioritize and train security personnel and prioritize the survivors or survivor advocates' security and well-being, for instance, through safe transportation to and from, such that when there's the activities out there, they know that for sure they can go and they can go to the venue of their activism or awareness and still go back to their respective homes or any other destination safely without anybody posing any harm or threat. Next slide, please. The other one is teaming up with an organization. Most interviewees have teamed up with the organization they already knew from service provision. And I think this will come up in the recommendations, whereby survivors and survivor leaders were not so they were not so open to joining other organizations or to teaming up with other organizations because they felt a sense of loyalty to the organization that either rescued them or received them or provided the reintegration support. And at the same time, others felt like there was a lot of gatekeeping in terms of which organizations one can join, which ones they cannot join because of affiliation with this organization. I think it will come up in the recommendations. All interviewees attest their organization to be a safe and respectful environment, describing the organization in a way that indicates that basic principles of trauma-informed environment are observed. Most of them engage with only one organization but would like to cooperate with more. Yeah, those that would like to cooperate with more are the ones that felt like there is gatekeeping and several other barriers to teaming up with organizations. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. So this is just an explanation to why some of these interviews, or most of them, felt like they are in a respectful environment. It's because there was respect, there was active listening, there was equality in communication, invitation of ideas, participation in discussions and decision making, show of care for individual needs, and affirmative action. For example, in regard to one's family or housing situation. And yeah, I can attest to that because I am personally a beneficiary of Heart Kenya that helped me with the reintegration support in terms of housing and food for like at least 2 to 3 months. And the invitation of ideas is pretty much the same thing that my colleague Ida was talking about, like engaging survivors and showing us that our voice matters. And I'm glad that these people we interviewed, I think they were 18. These are coming from 18 different people from different organizations who are agreeing to this. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, that is us on the validation meeting, and I will invite Dr. Dorothy to invite my colleague Shivan to do the recommendation. Or is it Dr. Dorothy first to do the qualitative? Yes, please go ahead.
Dr. Dorothy, you're muted, please.
Yes, thank you. Is it better now? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wanja, for this very insightful sharing. Let me be brief on the findings from organizations. And I think, Aline, we can skip directly to the slide where Shivana will take up for the organization. So that will be called organizational culture. So from the organization side, let me just share with you. Most organizations that took part in the research and answered the survey are offering direct service provision to survivors. All of them agreed that survivor inclusion is important. However, most of them included and engaged with survivor advocates on a level that is very much based on individual activities, like as volunteers, as community mobilizers. Not so many engage with survivors on the level of salary and paid positions in the organization or in decision-making positions. All the organizations said they want to move in the direction of more and deeper survivor inclusion and engagement, which is great. The greatest barrier that was named was lack of resources. So definitely how to increase resources also. And we have seen the greatest barrier on the side of active survivors is also finances. So this is definitely something that we'll need looking into if we want to move forward in survivor inclusion. And last but not least, they found that it would be good to have a standardized process for survivor inclusion, that it should be a participatory process, and that it should include monitoring and evaluation mechanisms from the start of setting up. I think that's in a nutshell the answers we got from organizations. And with this, I would like to hand over to Shivana to take us through, like, how do we actually get there? I think it's still further down. Yes, the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dorothy Anwanja. My name is Shivana for security assurance. Let me just show my face so that we all feel safe and know who Shivana is. But we know we are in Africa, so I'll try to work with the internet and switch off my video and just keep with audio on. Just give
Shivana, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. I was trying to reduce the volume from my laptop because it was giving me a feedback. So yeah, I'm going to share the recommendations quick as I can, so that we don't miss out on time. But these are some of, or almost all the, or let me say just all the recommendations that we managed to get from all the survivor leaders and survivors who managed to participate or be part of the research. And I'm going to give a very quick disclaimer if you hear me breaking English, because understand, oh, English is a language we learn every day. So yeah, if you hear me cracking it, yeah, bear with me. Just know my ancestors at work, but yeah. Yeah, so let's kick right into it. Starting from the first one to the last one, some of the recommendations, or all the recommendations that we got from survivors and other survivor leaders were be safe and respectful, keep trust and confidentiality, which I think, and this is in terms of what survivor engagement looks like. Most of the points are very self-explanatory, so I will not explain them as much. But I think we all understand what safety looks like when safety looks like when engaging, what respect looks like when engaging survivors, what confidentiality looks like when it comes to engaging survivors. Dedicate resources for more inclusion and intersectionality. I think this has been a conversation throughout the forum, where we even had Angela talk about inclusion and intersectionality and breaking down what that would look like when it comes to how a survivor might carry as many identities besides just their lived experience of trafficking. There might be a queer person, they might be also queer and, religious, they might be, coming from a very toxic tradition and all those other things. So that is also very important. Set a budget for survivor engagement. In most cases, we only cater for survivors. When engaging survivors, we only cater for them as beneficiaries rather than engaging them as, experts at, a higher level of, even if you're sharing your story, you're sharing it at a level of an ethical storytelling kind of program that is actually going to pay you. And, so setting aside such budgets is very, very important, like budgets that are not only going to leave survivors, but rather experts. Make time for inclusion and capacity building, which is very, very important. In most cases, the excuses that organizations have is that survivors do not have the capacity, to be included in spaces and all that, but yet it's always easy to work with them easier once you know, include them. Number one, know where know their areas of expertise or where they would thrive more. Just give me a minute. Dr. Dorothy, could you just do me a favor and take it on from that point? I'm getting back on as quick as possible.
Yes, or maybe Wanja would like to take it up. Wanja?
Yes, which point in particular?
We're on the first slide, and the next point is listen, ask, and actively include.
Okay, the recommendation here was about if a survivor or a survivor leader has a point, or maybe there are decisions to be made and there's a survivor on the desk, or maybe it comes to the attention of the survivor, then you ought to listen to their point of view as well, ask pertinent questions, and also actively include survivors in the entire process. And some of the people, no, I think this is on the recommendation, but from the interviews you conducted, I remember some of the interviewees saying that they were engaged in planning committees in the organizations, and they were engaged all the way from the inception of the idea and all the way to the end of the entire event. The other point. The other point is consider setting occasions for listening, feedback, change. So this particular recommendation is to the organization to be at par with the survivors' experience in the organization. That if there are things the organization is not right from the survivor's perspective, then they should listen to that feedback and also maybe justify why they've done that way. Ensure that the survivor is fully satisfied with the approaches and how the organizations together to ensure that they're achieving the same goals. Next slide, please. The other recommendation is ensure that survivors and employees are trained on relevant issues, for example, storytelling. And this point comes from the aspect of or your like share the experiences out there.
Hi, Wanja. Could you pause for a minute, please? Sorry, Wanja. Could you please check if your translation is on English so we don't get the French translation from your end, please? Then you may proceed. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering why something is speaking over my voice. Sorry, technology. Thank you for the heads up. Yeah, so I was saying this part of ensuring that survivors and employees are trained on relevant issues such as ethical storytelling and security comes from the aspect of awareness creation, activism, and all that, just to ensure that how they do the activism does not provoke some situations or does not endanger their lives while they do what they need to do to create the awareness or to sensitize the general public. I see my colleague Shivan is back. Shivan, you can continue from acknowledge and give room to the distinctive value of lived experience.
Thank you so much, Wanja, for taking up some of those points. I had a very quick emergency to work on, but everything is fine. Just continuing from where you stopped, but do not expect or limit survivors to sharing their personal experiences, like acknowledging and giving room to, I think even this point is quite also very self-explanatory as well. Being quite conscious when, like I even gave an example earlier about even when it comes to involving survivors in storytelling or telling their lived stories, you do not limit them, or if you have your own values as a leader or as an organization that limits survivors from sharing their stories. How about when you get a number that wants to share their story? How do you create space for them to do it safely and in a very respectful way that doesn't only limit them? Other areas of engagement that do not require sharing one's trafficking story, that is literally coming out or building a survivor from just being a survivor to an expert, which we also mentioned earlier. But this is now completely out of their lived, experiences, which is also an expertise of, its own level. But how do you engage survivors more if it's in leadership, if it's in advocacy or whatever area they are good at? How do you, elevate those areas? Create multiple access for survivors to join the movement. Also for those without prior engagement in social justice work. A lot of people do not, or let me say, a lot of survivors do not come from points of, even knowing their human rights. If you get to know this is the kind of survivor you're dealing with, and they are actually showing, interest in, doing the work, but they are completely green. How do you create space for this person to get to know, all the fundamental things or issues, or get more information around all the areas of what human rights looks like? Why does a survivor deserve, their rights, and how does a survivor come to a point of even claiming, rights and such rights and all that? Getting to understand all the fundamental human rights, points are also quite important. So that's I hope we're all noting and getting these recommendations, because they came from the field and the ground.
Shivana,
Yes?
just sorry, 1 minute, please. We're over time. Just 1 minute. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So yeah, sure. Create multiple access for survivors. I think I already mentioned that. Take in account individual needs. That's where intersectionality comes in. The next slide. This report is available on FTS website, so you can go and read it more in detail. I think the recommendations are quite important. So because of time, I think I'll just end there, unfortunately, but I hope we all get the time to go and read through and get to understand these points, because they came right from the Center of Survivors, which is very important for all of us as organization. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
pass it on back to you, Dr. Giselle. Oh yeah, to Sonia.
Thank you, Shivana, and to all our other panelists. Thank you so much. Dr. Dorothy, Wanja, thank you all for an insightful session. Your insights have shed light on the complexities and opportunities in survivor engagement research. And also to all that were part of this panel session, thank you so much. In conclusion, I'd like to acknowledge that survivor engagement isn't just a concept, it's a pathway to more inclusive and effective policies. I think together we can continue to champion survivor voices and drive meaningful change. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Giselle or Davina. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for a great presentation. As Dr. Balfour said, we're a little bit behind schedule, so we'll be moving straight into the Survivor Leadership Academy. I'll be introducing our leader for that panel, Nguyen Eunice Polo of the Survivor Network in Cameroon. She's a survivor leader and an advocate based in Cameroon, has been working with the Survivors Network there as the Executive Assistant and Human Resource Officer and Case Manager. She does everything. She's been doing great work on survivors reintegration and engagement, and she's also co-founded the Survivor Leadership Academy, which had its first cohort last year, training survivors to become survivor leaders. And she's a member of the African Survivor Coalition, the Survivor Alliance, Commonwealth 8.7 Network, and the Sexual Assault Advocacy Network, and a YALI alumni. So on to you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon from Cameroon. I am Eunice Ngwe. I work with Survivors Network Cameroon. I am happy to be here, and I'm a survivor leader and I'm a survivor advocate as well. With me, I have three powerful leaders who are members of my panel. Well, I will just briefly introduce them and then we start. We have Antonia Musunga. I'm sure I got her name right. She is representing the Freedom Fund, and the Freedom Fund stands as the sponsor for the Survivor Leadership Academy last year, September, which is the first cohort. We equally have our Francisca Mbuli, the CEO and founder of Survivors Network SM Cameroon, a survivor leader and a survivor advocate in the anti-human trafficking fight. She's equally my mentor. And then we have Brenda Odhiambo. She is coming in as the beneficiary of the Survivor Leadership Academy. She will tell us more about how the Survivor Leadership Academy has impacted her and what she has become now. Before I start with my question, I would just want to give a brief of what the Survivor Leadership Academy is all about. The Survivor Leadership Academy, in brief, is a program that had its cohort last year, September, its first cohort. And the main objective of the Survivor Leadership Academy is to build the capacity of survivors across Africa to become survivor leaders and survivor advocates in the fight against human trafficking. So without any waste of time, I don't know if I can get to Antonia. I briefly want her to tell us about the Freedom Fund and the relationship that she has built with partnership and the challenges that she faced in engaging the survivors-led organization and how they can be addressed. Antonia, over to you. Thank you. Okay, while we are waiting for her, we can come back to her. I'll move straight away to our Francisca Mbuli, who comes in as a beneficiary organization. Survivors Network was fortunate to be a beneficiary to a grant from the Freedom Fund, which was the starting point of Survivor Leadership Academy. So, Ma'am Awa, can you please tell us about your organization, Survivors Network, and what you learned from your partnership with the Freedom Fund, especially when it comes to Survivor Leadership Academy?
Good afternoon, everyone from Cameroon. I'm so happy to be here, and my apologies for being off the camera because of network hustle. Yeah, Survivors Network. I think a lot of us have heard about Survivors Network, though globally known, but Survivors Network is a community-based organization. We are female-led, and we started off with those who were first-hand rescued from human trafficking from the Middle Eastern countries, that's the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. And we are lay apolitical because that needs to highly be highlighted since we live in Cameroon, but it's a country that is so much touched with political crisis in most of its regions. So Survivors Network has its priority. When we started, we're prioritizing creating awareness and sensation campaign because we thought it wise, and looking at the situation, many of Cameroonians were living in the hustle of human trafficking, but we had no idea that we were in that situation. Myself, I was even trafficked. My traffic to the Middle East was not my first time being trafficked. I had a history of trafficking from even Norway, which I went there for studies, but that is somehow like put behind. But notwithstanding, even my situation that led to the breakthrough of me being a survival advocate or a human trafficking advocate, I never knew that was it until I found myself into it. So Survivors Network, after all this personal experience, with those who were first-hand returned from the scourge of human trafficking from Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal, we decided to raise our voices using our audio. And that's how Survivors Network evolved. At some point in time, during the growth of Survivors Network, we realized that we need to look at what pushed us into this situation. So Survivors Network was really like basically focused on though creating awareness and sensation, but we also diverted most of our resources and activities into empowering ourselves and others who were vulnerable to be part of, who were vulnerable to fall victims into human trafficking. So we decided to fall a lot on economic empowerment, which we did it because we knew those are the root causes of why we fall victim to this human wrong. Notwithstanding, I can say 2 years backward and presently, Survivors Network has been so engaged in raising survivors to become advocates of this fight because we believe in diversity. We believe in hearing the diverse stories from others and also intersectionality to bring others from diverse background, races, sexual orientation into this fight. So we have been so much into raising young leaders to sit on the platform where human trafficking laws are being made and participate actively in this fight so that this ground is common to all and so that we have survivors in most communities that our work can reach out to, not only within Cameroon. And because we believe that when you have a survivor from a community speak out about the ordeal of human trafficking, it will be better heard, not because they are from that community. Yes, because they are from there, and also because the language also it's common to their people. So we want every community to have active survivors to lead in this fight. So that's why 2 years counting, we have been so much engaged in raising or grooming survivors to participate in this fight. I will leave Survivors Network and go to what is so important, which is our involvement in the Survival Leadership Academy. So quickly, when we fall on this grant opportunity, I discussed it with Eunice and we reached out so fast to Jackie and Dr. Giselle. And I was so happy when Dr. Giselle said yes, without even hesitating, that she is going to guide us on this journey from the writing of the project to everything. And fortunately for us, we had the grants and it was not an easy journey, but finally, we had 11 survivors from across 5 African countries of Kenya, Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, and Uganda in one hall in Kenya. That was a whole lot of brains brought together. We were so happy, first of all, because this was the birth and promotion of sisterhood and meeting those that we've been talking with virtually for over a long time finally sitting in the same space, eating together, and maybe sharing ideas by the side of the swimming pool during the evening. We were so open to each other, which I love the idea so much. That was the first time of me seeing diverse leaders being together as one. There was no differences, there was no discrimination, there was no stigmatization. If this person is better qualified or a better leadership than the other. If Jackie is getting me rightly, she knows. I personally, as Francisca, I always love a space where people freely, that there's not that like she's a greater survival leader than the other person is. We were so much on this platform that was really acceptable by each other. Also, Survivors Leadership Academy came in as an open door for us to know that we are here in one spirit to push each other who have that zeal, who have that story that the world needs to hear, to be better capacitated and to be encouraged by those who have started to join the fight, not because we are looking at them that they are new, but because we want our sisters to be there. It was a platform that I also, though other will say that Francisca, no, I don't like that. It was a platform for me to learn that I also need some composure. We were also groomed by a sister from DRC, Bernadette, on how to pose, how to speak, how to pause ourselves when you want to speak. And that was a great lesson. I was also fortunate to explain to others how I have been doing my little works and pushing forward, even in times of funds or no funding, because it's a journey that cannot be accomplished just by you hearing from Francisca and you think that the next day you need to stand out there and be at the lead. You need to start from somewhere, little steps, and then you have to make it up there. Then it was also a platform for us to open up to other platforms that survivors need to be connected to, because there are other platforms that our sisters don't know. For example, Survival Alliance is there, that it's really educative. You got to meet they have been existing before SLA. So that was a platform for us to introduce all those other platforms so that our sisters belongs there and we all learn our lessons, because I think learning is a continuous process. Notwithstanding, I cannot say much about how it went because I am part of the team, the organizing team, and Brenda will come in to really give what she as a participant learned from it, from the life perspective and from firsthand what she can see. We also had some challenges. The challenges that I noticed was that I think some of us survivors need to have opportunities to have fundings for basic formal education, because we have that inner spirit that want us to belong, but there are some lapses that are holding us. And that also goes along with language. If we look commonly, there was lack of an interpreter, though our sisters from Kenya stood up to the game to serve as interpreters. But it really slowed us because we didn't do this as a presentation form of it was like a discussion, a group discussion, which was really going on well. But those lapses really put us a little bit aback that next time we are having such gathering, we need to provide for that. And we also encourage our sisters to take up on the language that is best common to all of us to flow freely. Okay, nextly, I realized that there was the closeness of those who are coming from the same country and those who are speaking the same language. Though I am a victim of that, but I also see that as a challenge, because when we arrive, it's good that sometimes we accept each other from where they are coming from, and let's try to mix and share experiences, limit being close to those you've known, those who speak the same language, so that we all better found a way to mingle. Also, we discovered that some bosses, I'll call them bosses because of what they are doing. They need to be called leaders, but they become bossy when they are trying to hold back some survivors working within them to thrive. They don't give them those spaces they deserve, even if when they fight to find themselves in those spaces, they are still feeling as if they are under the control of their bosses. So quickly, I will conclude by saying that those are some of what I can speak briefly, and the others will be coming from my peer and panelists. Thank you so much.
Eunice, you're muted. Eunice, you're muted. Are you there? I think the internet is not cooperating. Can you hear us, Eunice?
Perhaps Antonia can go on.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I know she was going to introduce Antonia next. So Antonia, I saw you on just a second ago. If you're there, please feel free to jump right on in. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome.
Thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to see all of you well and to join you in yet another Free the Slaves African Forum. My name is Antonia. I am a human rights feminist activist based in Nairobi, Kenya. And I work at the Freedom Fund, managing the movement building portfolio as a programs manager. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, and it's wonderful to see very many Kenyans, survivor leaders that I have seen grow in the space, but also partners, development partners, as well as global leaders present here today. I think Eunice and Awa had given me a very simple assignment to use 10 minutes to share what, as a Freedom Fund, what our strategy on movement building is, what it looks like, and how, at what point it intersects with the Survivor Leadership Academy, but as well as building survivor leadership in the sector in multi-sectoral ways. So like I said, I manage the movement building portfolio, and the long and short of it is there are two components in that portfolio, one of them being an unrestricted grant called the Survivor Leadership Fund, which is for establishing organizations, and they get a 20,000 sort of a seed grant that is one-off, and they can use it for whatever priorities is set. And what that sort of does, it gives them a break from rigorous fundraising, but gives them a chance to think about what their priorities are. And like we know, as we start organizations, a lot of times co-founders are confronted with two very competing priorities, either setting up the foundation of the organization and setting up the culture within which the work would be happening, and fundraising very rigorously. And that can often, be very tasking. And the other thing I forgot to mention, I'm also co-founder of Azadi Kenya, which is a survivor collective based in Kenya. And so I'll be sharing experiences both of those things. So that's what the Survivor Leadership Fund does. It is usually rolled out in phases in different countries. So it's not, while it has a global presence, it is usually rolled out. We roll it out in specific countries that are aligned strategically with the Freedom Fund. And often those decisions are made as the year progresses. And so there's no telling, I cannot possibly tell you now when the next call in your country will be. Those are still internal discussions after we've just finished our Latin America round now. But follow us on social media to keep tabs on that. The other fund that I manage is a convening fund, under which now we've partnered with the Survival Leadership Academy last year. And this fund is, and also Free the Slaves in multiple other forums. And the fund is for one, to support individual survivors to attend convenings that are regional and international, like Awa said. And many speakers alluded to the fact that often survivor leadership is getting to experience and be part of this process, policy, discussions, conversations to build confidence and build awareness and understanding of what really happens in the sector. And so the Convening Fund provides that opportunity for individual survivors. And we also support organizations that are willing and who have the objective to organize convenings or conferences that support movement building, but include survivors in more intentional and ways that are affirming and dignifying of survivor leadership and supportive of that concept. So for us, while that happens while there are conferences that happen in the global north, we focus on the global south. We are also keen to support conferences or workshops or convenings that center the voices of survivors, not just as telling their experiences, but as expertise. And we're usually very keen to also understand what safeguarding mechanisms there are at, especially recognizing the power dynamics that often exist in these spaces. For us, what we've seen is under the portfolio, a lot of the organizations we support across the two funds, 46% of them are either survivor-led or were established in the last 0 to 10 years. So quite young organizations. Some are small collectives and still in the process of registering, setting up policies and frameworks, and often experiencing a lot of barriers in terms of how to articulate what their strategy is. Some of them don't even have strategies. They have, a group of activities that sort of speak to a strategy that is not well defined. We also see a lot of strong focus on centering the experience of victims and survivors of trafficking, which is usually very inspiring to see, even despite the fact that strategies are still very at developed stages. And we also have observed since we started doing the movement building work, that a lot of organizations that we work with employ a multiplicity of strategies, either engaging at more grounded in the grassroots. They are quite plugged in the grassroots, connected to the survivors and responding to their daily needs and specific needs of the survivors, but also engaging at high level spaces whenever called upon. So just to say that really means that when we look at what the journey of survivor leadership has been in the sector, it seems that survivors are gradually and surely moving into more, to be included, to participate and lead in more intersectional strategies in how they show up in leadership in multiple fronts in the sector. Many of the organizations that we work with, including the work that we've done with the Survivor Network Africa under the Academy, we see a lot of the funding being dedicated towards capacity building, which demonstrates what the bigger need for many organizations are. And capacity building could either be technical expertise or just building the infrastructure of the organizations to be able to attract funding. So either policy, setting up websites, supporting things like documentation and knowledge management, community strengthening for organizations that work in community. And by doing so, they strategically place themselves in a way that they would be able to attract funding. Now, a caveat in that statement is that while these can often be an outcome, oftentimes that is not always the case, as we have all experienced in the last 10 years. The funding in the space has shrunk, and there are even more competing priorities, more emergencies, so to speak, more funding being required to respond to emergencies, as opposed to more longer-term strategic work in the sector. So what our partners have valued the most since we started, and I hope this is a call to action to other partners in the room, that truly what we've learned, even in managing the both grants or funding portfolios, that partners really value the trust dimension. I remember when we first engaging with Eunice last year, and she was asking me, "Don't send your monthly report." And I said, no, just go do your thing and send us the report once you're done. And I think Eunice can attest to this. We don't send partners reminders. We also recognize the fatigue that comes after organizing a conference. So take your time, write your report. We also trust that whatever amount of money you requested for, that you will use it for the intended purpose. So the high levels of trust between the Freedom Fund and its partners has always been appreciated, and also giving partners room to move around budget lines if and when they need it, without extensive writing of reviewed budgets and a lot of back and forth. Just recognizing the fact that often organizing convenings, sometimes emergencies occur, and there isn't really a lot of time to going back and forth, and so giving that agency to survivors and survivor leaders and allies who are interested, who are leading this work, to do so. And partners really, and we value the flexibility and the freedom that it comes with, just by seeing that with this level of trust, that there's a lot more survivor-centered response. So for instance, organizations are able to respond to safeguarding needs quickly and as soon as possible to prevent further harm. We also have observed a lot of capacity increase in the sector or with the partners that we've worked with, but also planning innovatively, particularly, for example, the academy itself. And I think they will speak about this when they sub-granted organizations, just seeing that redistribution of funding and what we call in Kenya, devolving resources to survivor leaders themselves to see what they would do and innovate around is a great value for us. We also acknowledge that the way the funds are designed and being trust-based, it gives a lot of credibility to organizers and survivors, so that they can always use this as a testimony or as a show that they can manage funds well and achieve greater objectives with even limited funding. I think the other thing that I find very useful is that the way the funding, the call for application is structured, it forces all of us to think about the things that we've not been thinking about. So for instance, what is the follow-up plan? What next? How do we then build up to these activities to contribute to greater activities collectively? And also, how do we document what we've learned so far, so that there's a resource of some sort of knowledge resource. The biggest challenge we've had is that because of how limited the grant is in terms of size, partners are almost always forced to work harder than the most strict economist to make the money work. And we really, really honor and appreciate all our partners for doing that. Also, disbursing the money in a one-off tranche has been a challenge in some context. Some contexts like Brazil, you have to, almost get a letter, multiple letters to access the funding, which sometimes can delay, like paying for things like venues or paying for service providers prior. And that becomes a challenge in terms of logistics. And then the differences in context, the value of what now the convening fund amount is, it's at 25,000, while the survivor leadership fund is at 20,000, keeps on differentiated in becoming, it keeps on being very different because of context and inflation challenges and high cost of living. So what was said earlier cannot pay for the things that maybe 2 years down the line could afford. And then we also spoke about limited resources. I spoke about that, and also diverse educational background and cultural context, power dynamics between men and women, patriarchy. We've had incidences where as soon as the money landed, the men, pushed the women out of the organization and took leadership and only called in the women to do the reporting. Unfortunately, those things happen, and since a one-off grant or a money that is released in a one-off tranche, there's really nothing we can do once those conflicts have begun or power dynamics or power struggles have begun. I think one of the things that we've learned also, this being the second year of the convening fund, is while partners have developed safeguarding policies and practices, often physical convenings present different challenges in terms of safeguarding, and really urging all of us as partners to think about safeguarding beyond physical safety, to be aware of changes in power dynamics, even within survivor collectives, and the possibility of safeguarding harms and violations happening in this context. But how do we respond to them in a way that is holistic, dignifying, and doesn't entrench, more power dynamics within the sector? I think also the thing that we've also not done properly is document the journey of the convening fund and connecting partners to organize or build up into each other's work. And that is a learning lesson for us. And we deeply appreciate all of our partners, including the Survivor Network Africa. And we hope, this work can be escalated or grown into different contexts, because the need for building survivor inclusive convenings is still very much present. Thank you. I think I've run out of time, so I'll stop there. And like I said, if you follow us on social media, you should see, and all our pages are Freedom Fund, you should see our contacts, our social media pages, and we can always update you also via our email, which is the conveningfund@thefreedomfund.org. I'll put it in the chat box for anybody who's interested. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonia. I'm so sorry for
Seems like we've lost Eunice again. Eunice, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm so sorry about the internet. It's so frustrating, and it's really here. That's why it's disturbing so much. Straight away, we are going to move to Brenda. Brenda has been a beneficiary of the Survival Leadership Academy. I just want Brenda to tell us how the Survival Leadership Academy has impacted her personally and professionally in her fight against modern. Brenda, you're welcome.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Brenda Odhiambo. I'm a survivor advocate and a leader here in Kenya. I'm one of the Survivor Advisory Board at HAT Kenya, and also I'm the Secretary of Survivor Network Kenya. Thank you. So, as a survivor and beneficiary of the Survivor Leadership Academy, personally, it built me professionally. And from the teachings that we had, I acquired skills of leadership. So who is a leader? A great leader inspires confidence in other people and moves them to action with the qualities of ability to make decisions, trustworthiness, empowerment to others, clear communication, and resilience. Through the academy, we also had educational units like effective communication skills, conflict resolution skills, professional speaking skills, and self-care. We'll go to effective communication skill. What is effective communication skill? This is an essential for building strong relationship, fostering teamwork, and achieving project. So one should use a clear language to organize self and thoughts logically. Second, what is this conflict resolution skill? This is a process of ending a dispute between two parties and reaching to agreement where it will satisfy the two parties. There's a process of conflict resolution. This is defining the problem, gather the information, identify possible solution, evaluate and select the best solution that both parties and disputants can support, and finally get to agreement. In professionally speaking, this means that you communicate with clarity and confidence, putting listeners at ease while also informing and persuading them. And there are ways of professionally speaking where you have to know your audience, you have to practice so that you can give a good communication. You have to use feedback as your advantage from your audience. You have to make an eye contact and also calm your nerves. Also learn to be clear and have a confident tone. Maintain a good posture and avoid filter words. Another unit that was so professional, and you also need to put it in practice, which we learned from the academy, was self-care management. Through the self-care management, first, we should know what is self-care. Self-care is taking time to do things that will help you to live well and improve both your physical health and mental health. This can help you manage stress, lower your risk of illness, and increase your energy. Even small acts of self-care in your daily life can give a big impact. Build your resilience, support your resource and inner strength, and also create flexibility to adapt. In the academy, we learned that self-care and personal grooming as a survivor leader help us to improve on how to project our professionalism, trust that we survivors are enough and we can do anything, and that all about confidence and also taking the lead. In the academy, which it was more important, it's that we were given seed money that was offered to us, and we managed to start some small movements and other things that survivors did. For myself, through attending the academy, it built my professionally by it opened my way of thinking and putting it into practice. We made a small movement together with my fellow survivor, and we used time to act as the movement name, where we visited a church here in Nairobi, raised awareness to them, taught them what human trafficking is, and above all, we also had to write a report showing on how we did the whole process. By this act, I acquired skills of mobilization, report writing, communication skills, analyzing, and logistic management. Through all, I also networked with other survivors all over Africa, where we met and have a chat that it enabled me to build my social life. Personally, this academy impacted me a lot. I will still mention it has built my strength of confidentiality and networking. It has really built my social life and made me a good brand. In other hand, through the stipend that we are given afterwards, it really motivated us and built our life. Not only us, but also the community. Let us take this good time to acknowledge Free the Slaves, Survivor Network Cameroon, and other organizations in the support of the Leadership Academy. You might not know how much you have built our lives, but our gloss will tell in a while. We are committed to do our best and in future to be a helping hand to Africa and the world. And through the Survivor Network Cameroon, let us make a big change with the collaboration with Survivor Network Kenya that has just started recently. And we hope for future engagement together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you, Awa. Thank you, Antonia. The survival, this is just one of the testimonies of the so many testimonies that we have from the Academy. And to everyone, we are hoping that this year we will still meet. And the Survival Leadership Academy is not just for specific people, but it is for all survivors across Africa. Feel free to reach out to us if you are a survivor and you are willing to be a part of this wonderful academy. And we are hoping that this year we'll have the second cohort next year and in the years to come, why not across Africa and the world. So thank you so much, dear panelists. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you had a great time. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so thank you, Eunice, for a great panel. We're now moving on to our last panel for the day, Survivor Engagement in West Africa. And Mamadou Wane is going to be our moderator. Mamadou works on the platform of human rights promotion in Senegal, and he had studied in France. He joined UNICEF and was the principal administrator of Children in Particular Difficult Situations Protection Program. And he's now the national coordinator of the platform of human rights promotion, which is a platform of Senegalese civil society organizations and international NGOs. Human Rights Watch is one of their founding members. He's been focusing on child protection and focusing on forced begging, domestic servitude, and sexual exploitation, and looking to really analyze the effects of COVID-19 on this crisis. So over to you, Mamadou.
Merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup. D'abord, je salue tous les participants. Bon, je vais aller très vite parce que c'est vrai, c'est un défi pour nous d'être les derniers à présenter. Et je pense qu'il est important de relever le défi, de vraiment rester dans les 10 minutes accordées à chacun. Parce que si on dépasse ça, la fatigue commence à se faire sentir. Ceci étant dit, vraiment, je remercie Free the Slave et surtout la direction régionale de m'avoir impliqué dans ce forum qui est très important pour nous. Donc, la problématique des survivants, de l'engagement des survivants en Afrique de l'Ouest est très important. Et à ce titre, je rappelle qu'en Afrique de l'Ouest, vous avez le Nigeria. Le Nigeria qui est le plus grand pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest en termes de poids démographique, de poids économique, etc. Donc, c'est pour nous très, très important, le Nigeria. Et à ce titre, nous allons avoir Monsieur Sandé Emmanuel, qui est du Nigeria, et nous aurons également une femme leader. Et vraiment leader, quand je dis leader, ce n'est pas seulement leader, mais qui porte une forte vision, qui est également du Nigeria. Et pour clôturer, nous avons le Sénégal, peut-être qu'il n'a pas le poids démographique du Nigeria, mais qui est un important pays d'origine, mais surtout de destination par rapport à la problématique de la traite des personnes, notamment des enfants et des femmes. Donc, je ne vais pas être très long. Bon, je dirais tout simplement que M. Sandé Emmanuel, c'est un spécialiste de la protection de l'enfant qui a une très grande expérience de plus de 20 ans de travail en faveur des enfants et des jeunes adultes en situation de vulnérabilité. Et principalement les enfants, et principalement, pas seulement en situation de vulnérabilité, mais ce sont des enfants et des jeunes adultes qui ont besoin de mesures spéciales de protection. C'est très important. Donc, c'est un travailleur social, spécialiste dans la protection des enfants, surtout ceux ayant besoin de mesures spéciales, et en même temps qui a fondé la Fondation Emmanuel et dont il est le directeur exécutif. Donc, il va faire la première présentation pour nous dire qu'est-ce que cette fondation est en train de faire par rapport à notre problématique qui est l'engagement des survivants dans la région Afrique de l'Ouest. Voilà, je lui laisse la parole en attendant d'introduire le second panéliste qui est également, à mon avis, très important, qui, compte tenu des gaps dans la réponse par rapport aux survivants de la traite, des réponses, le gap systémique en termes de système, elle a créé aussi le réseau des femmes immigrantes de retour. Ça, c'est très important. Et le dernier travaille pour une ONG qui s'appelle La Lumière. La Lumière, c'est vraiment une des ONG championnes, surtout dans la prise en charge des victimes de traite, notamment les enfants et les femmes, et travaille dans une zone névralgique, dans une zone extrêmement importante. C'est dans le sud du Sénégal, le sud-est, je pense, dans les zones aurifères. Voilà. Donc, je laisse la parole à Sandé Emmanuel d'abord. Et je lui prie de rester vraiment dans les 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. I will be brief as much as I can. Thank you for having me. I'm quickly going to share my slide. It's just going to be a brief one. And but I'm going to start with this just story. Well, I'm going just to brief about the story. My name is 765. That's just given to. My mother left at 2, stayed with my mentally ill father, and eventually he raped me and turned me to sex 2, ran to the street, and then promised by another woman to help me, who eventually taken me in as an house help, and because of the treatment ran away again, met a man who again sold me for another time, and then later ran away. And this go on and on until I met a woman who now promised to help me. And she took me and then sold me to another woman who eventually sold me again to another woman in Togo. And finally, they sold me to another woman in Senegal. In this process, in Senegal, I worked as a sex worker, and the woman, I paid almost about 1.8 million CFAs to this woman. In the process, I got pregnant and I was thrown out. I was just 17 years early this year. And presently, I was rescued and undergoing rehabilitation and reintegration. And one key thing is this: I leave my abusers to God. I am 765, presently going to 18 years. And this is just the type of survivors we want to engage, or we are engaging in West Africa. A lot of things are in common. And when you look at it closely, who is actually this survivor 765? A person that has been betrayed severally, emotionally broken, and that doesn't actually trust anyone any longer. Is a young person that doesn't have hope again for future, and also has been physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually abused and enslaved as well. So when you look at the survivors, and you now realize that the survivors engage person, they are people that have been betrayed, abused by trusted people, damaged emotionally, and now they have very strong difficulty in trusting people because of their past experience. And so they put on this defensive mechanism for them not to be exploited any longer. But in West Africa, from the little experience I've had over the years, the family structure build a very strong trust in kids and young adults. And hence the traffickers also explore this, using that particular structure to explore and then exploit other people, exploit the younger person, especially young ladies. And also in West Africa, you look at the issue of insecurity, poverty, infrastructure deficit, and political instability. These are some of the things that the traffickers worked on. But when you look at it, in the past few years, what are things that actually worked in West Africa? The first thing that actually worked, and we've always been advocating that professionals, interventionists need to look into, the first thing is we need to see survivors as victims who need help and who need love. Even if they are offenders, we have to have that approach in engaging the survivors that they actually need this love and they need help. Secondly, we need to accept our survivors. In Nigeria, that is one of the key strengths, accepting survivors, the way they are, the way they work, and things work closely. And this enhances the engagement process in making sure that the survivors get involved in issues that has to pertain to them. And this shouldn't be just in words. It also has to be in action. Number 3 is building trust in small things, knowing fully that a lot of them have been betrayed. They don't have trust. So small things, when one has trust in small things for such, it now encourages them to trust the professionals more in working together, and also in building that engagement we want to achieve with them within the sector and within the survivor space. Again, there's no need doing a kind of refreshment of their past negative experience. We see this happening often when people are asking questions, trying to conduct investigation, conduct researches and investigations, keep on going over, making the survivors to talk more about the negative things that has happened. So that has to put aside. And then also be friendly in communication. That also works for us in working with survivors within the space in the West African region. And then also bringing continuous engagement, reaffirming that, look, you have fallen, you can also rise again. This helps very, very much. But while doing this, there is need also to be firm, because there are some characteristics that they come with. There is need in the interest of other survivors. There's need for one to be firm, working and engaging the survivor. And lastly, it is better not to promise what you are not sure of doing for these survivors. Knowing fully there have been a lot of past promises that have failed. So as professionals, don't need to get into that, promising to make them feel happy or make them feel better. What you cannot afford, there is no need. So looking at it closely in Nigeria and in other West African regions, also peer-to-peer engagement within the survivors has actually enhanced the success of rehabilitation and reintegration. And we also need to bear it in mind. The issue of religion play a vital role in West Africa, knowing fully that many of these survivors have taken different oaths, and they believe that this is holding on them. So engaging them, we need to actually bear it in mind that religion also plays a vital role and need to be used positively. So also family and community structure in West Africa. And engaging men survivors presently is gradually paying out. Recently, there was a shelter open for men in Nigeria before. And I heard one of the presenters mentioning this earlier today, that there's no shelter or intervention for targeting men. Now that is also gaining ground, starting from Nigeria. And working with Free the Slave in the past 2 years, 3 new survivors network have been established in Nigeria and gradually building stronger support within themselves. And the regular support group meeting have also provided opportunity for these survivors to work together, to also build together. But moving forward in recommendation, while I wind down, the first thing, there is need to mobilize and bring together other survivors in Nigeria, in West Africa, have a kind of bigger and omnibus coordination that will be able to get involved in policy development, in advocacy, in decision making. Two, there is need also to build capacity. I'm happy when I'm hearing survivors talking from Cameroon, Kenya. I think there is also need also to build capacity of survivors in other West African countries. And lastly there is need also to build the capacity of professionals working with survivors to ensure that the real engagement of survivors when it comes to planning, when it comes to implementation of action is actually needed. I sincerely want to thank everyone listening to me, and I hope that moving forward, we'll be able to have a more collaboration in the West African sub-region that will make the survivors much more better. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Merci beaucoup, Emmanuel. Vraiment, et puis vous avez battu le record. Et comme on est en retard, certainement je ne pourrais pas faire des commentaires, mais j'ai beaucoup apprécié l'approche par les pairs et aussi tenir compte de certains facteurs socioculturels, dont la religion. Et je pense que c'est très, très, très important aujourd'hui. Hein? Et aussi, bon, même moi, dans ma tête, les survivants, bon, je ne voyais pas, y compris les auteurs. Et cette dimension, à mon avis, même au niveau conceptuel, c'est extrêmement important, y compris le renforcement des capacités des intervenants, des professionnels qui interviennent, bon, etc., etc. Excusez-moi. Hein. Maintenant, on va passer, on va donner, je pense que c'est Madame Chilia Ifi Azou. Voilà. Merci Emmanuel. Je pense que c'est très important, comme le sont appris, on va partager notre communication. Est-ce qu'elle est là? La deuxième panéliste.
Okay, yes, I am here.
Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone from Nigeria. My name is Chilean Ifiazo. I'm not going to turn on my camera for too long because I realized that the internet is not so strong. So this is me. I will turn off so that there will be no disconnection at some point. Thank you so much. I'm sharing my screen. Just give me a moment. Okay. Hi. So I'm talking about the engagement of survivors in Africa from a survivor's perspective, and I'm going to speak from personal experience and from the experience of someone who is leading a community of survivors of over 300 members so far. First, I would like to answer the question, who are survivors, from what we've seen so far in this region. So the definition that people who engage survivors or work with survivors have is what you see or what we see. Beneficiaries, you have the needy and entitled definition or comments. You have the helpless.
We cannot hear you.
And powerless, you have individuals coping with complex trauma, grief, anxiety. These are limiting Nigeria's program that I attended. I'm not going to mention, so I can conceal the information of the organization that did that. So during a group session, I introduced myself as a survivor leader, and someone who I was introducing myself to, my expectation from him was, oh, how are you able to do the work you're doing? Because I expect him to be informed when you say survival leader. But he immediately went to the
On a des problèmes de connexion.
second one, needy and entitled, and across this region, hold on to so strongly, they don't want to let go of. They don't see survivors as resourceful. Hello, sorry, my internet went off for a bit. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
I'm so sorry about earlier.
Allez-y. Oui.
I need to share my screen again, right?
Allez-y, il faut commenter.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm so sorry about earlier. Okay, so I was talking about the different definitions that the organizations that engage with survivors within West Africa have versus what it's supposed to be, right? When you have the mindset that the people who you're trying to engage are needy and entitled, helpless, powerless, have a range of emotions that they need to overcome first, you don't prioritize engaging them, right? So I was sharing the experience I had being in a working group one time, and I introduced myself as a survival leader. The first reaction of someone who has worked in the anti-trafficking sector for over 20 years, the way he reacted to me was the second one, needy and entitled. And he went ahead, even in that working group, to share how he has seen survivors within Nigeria not necessarily resourceful or resilient or doing anything showing that they are empowered, right? And so when he was done, and when we're done with the working group, most of the working group members were like, how long have you, Chilean, been in this sector? Because some of the things you shared here, some of the ideas you brought in, we've not heard about it, or we've not even thought about it being in the anti-trafficking sector. So he had judged me based on the initial definition that he has for survivors, right? And so if they hold on to all of this, there would be no engagement. If we're going to define survivor engagement, we are talking about allowing survivors play active role in their recovery, in advocacy, ensuring that their voices and their needs are prioritized, right? But then what we see is the organizations taking the lead and the survivors basically playing no role. If this continues, there is no engagement. I mean, we want to see engagement. We want to see survivors participate in everything. And so I'm encouraging all the organizations that are working with survivors in the West, in West African region, to employ some of the things that show forth that these survivors are actually empowered. They have the strength. They have the what it takes to lead, right? And in most cases, some of the things we've also seen is storytelling that is not ethical. You're encouraging survivors to tell their stories in places where they are not even protected or even informed on how to tell these stories so that they don't get into any form of trouble, or it doesn't demean them, right? This has happened over and over. I have quite a number of survivors who I started some of the survival leadership programs with that quit because they kept pushing them into telling their stories unethically, which wasn't even okay, right? So ideas that because I rescued you or because I'm supporting you, you owe me your story, is not permitting engagement. So my big question is there survivor engagement in this region? I would have said no, but I'm going to say not as it should be. Challenges stopping survivor engagement in West Africa. So if we're going to talk about co-production, it means that we are collaborating from inception of the project till the end, right? So you find out that there is no collaboration in planning or in decision making. So basically, it's the organizations that are making all the decisions and the survivors are just sitting around and watching. And then you are invited to kind of validate what has been said or what has been agreed upon. There is no shared leadership responsibilities anywhere. I mean, I've been here for 6 years and I encourage my people to stay put, but then I know that in most cases, they come back to ask, how are you able to endure all of this? No mutual respect and trust between both the organizations and survivors. No value for survivor expertise or lived experience. So what they believe is that the only thing you have is all of what has happened to you. You have no information, you have no ideas, you have no knowledge. They are only employing you to just share basically what has happened to you and not how to go forward or how you can use what has happened to you to impact community. Ongoing communication and feedback not existing. Recognizing the power dynamics and addressing imbalances. In all of this, you see a re-echoing of tokenism in this region. This presentation is not to say that the anti-trafficking effort in West Africa is not effective. It is just to say that there is a need for survivor engagement that has to be meaningful, not just something to say we had 20 or 30 numbers. We don't need numbers. We need to see that the survivors are actually being engaged and are actually putting in their knowledge and resources into the anti-trafficking movement, and in whatever they want to do, they are taking the lead. Best practices for survivor engagement. So for us in West Africa, I'm recommending creating safe and brave spaces for survivors, allow survivors to have autonomy, to lead, allow them to take the lead. It's their script, it's their story, it's their life. You cannot be the one writing it. I've seen cases where you're basically trying to redirect the life of the survivor or how they share their stories and what they say. I've been in a program where this organization, not to mention their name, basically twisted my story to suit their work. I mean, changed what my experience was to suit what they wanted to portray at that point. And I felt deceived because when I was invited to speak in this program, I was invited to speak based on the fact that I want to educate people who were in the program, only for me to come there to validate what they were trying to preach. I was disappointed, but then I knew I wasn't alone because I was not the only survivor there. We went home regretting attending the program in the first place. There should be trust and rapport, empower survivors through leadership opportunities, support and amplify survivor-led initiatives and survivor-led work in this region. Don't ask me or don't say you're not doing so much. I've heard that from someone who is supposed to teach me how to do so much. That is basically putting all our work down and telling us that we are not trying enough. Meanwhile, in the survivor community, we are grateful that we have each other at this point and that we are pushing regardless of all the things that we've seen so far. Building capacity and resources of survivor for survivor engagement. So this goes beyond just training the survivors. It also has to do with building the capacity of organizations that are engaging survivors. There's just a lot of work to do. Sorry. Survivors engaging with each other. I feel like because of some of the information that has been received so far, being here 6 years now, I've seen survivors not so much involved. I mean, there are a lot of survivor-led initiatives in Nigeria so far. So I'm using Nigeria as a case study. And hardly do we work together because we do not even trust the organizations, and we find it hard to trust each other. So I think there is a need to also empower survivors to engage with each other. Addressing power imbalances and stigma. I believe that when all of this is done, I believe that there will be improved services. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Improved services, survivor engagement would ensure that services are tailored to meet the survivors' needs and priorities. Enhanced credibility, there will be informed decision-making, amplified voices, voices of the survivors, better outcomes in all the projects that are going on, increased accountability, reduced stigma, empowered communities, both that would foster relationship between the communities of survivors and their communities as well, increased empowerment. I want to say that we should keep in mind that survivors, empowering survivors is not just giving them a voice, but amplifying the voice they already have. Survivor engagement is not a checkbox, but a cornerstone of effective anti-trafficking efforts. Survivors' voices are not just important, but imperative for creating a world free from exploitation. So take away the voices of survivors from all of this. You know, I've been done community outreaches where people reached back out to me to say, I have seen certain documentaries and videos and I doubted. Now seeing someone who's been through this kind of experience, now I know that it's true. So I know that that person who made such comments will not be in the situation where they will be trafficked or experience exploitation, because now they have information firsthand from a survivor. Empowerment begins when survivors are believed, valued, and respected. My call to action would be invest in survivor engagement. I know that this will cost a lot because it's in stages. I mean, because we've not had it, there is just a lot of work to do, so it will cost a lot, but we are pleading for organizations to invest in survivor engagement. Take away the range of emotions that you see in survivors and see who they really are, and you'll be interested in investing in survivor-centered initiatives and programs. Support and amplify survivor-led initiatives and survivor-led work. Partner with us. Take away the trust issues and please see how we can work together. Sometimes the cases we receive, we don't even know organizations to refer them to because of the fact that these organizations don't even trust survivor-led initiatives. So it's hard, you know. Sometimes we invest our resources, our money to make sure that survivors like us thrive and come out of trafficking because the organizations are not believing us. And then join the movement, partner with us to prioritize survivor engagement and empowerment. Thank you very much. And I hope that we'll see a lot of change in West Africa. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup. C'est très, très, très intéressant. Franchement, bon, mais on est coincé par le temps et puis il y a eu de la qualité également. Mais je pense que votre diagnostic, il est très intéressant. Les recommandations également sont très intéressantes, surtout en termes de capitalisation de bonnes pratiques, etc., etc. Mais je pense que votre travail sera capitalisé. Voilà, on va passer avec votre permission à la dernière présentation avec Aliou Bahoum de l'ONG du Sénégal. Voilà. Voilà. Est-ce que vous êtes prêt, Aliou? Est-ce que oui, Aliou. Est-ce que vous êtes là, Aliou? Je crois qu'il n'est pas là. Hein?
Il est bien en ligne, hein? Il est bien en
Bahoum,
ligne.
est-ce
On va
que
vérifier
vous pouvez activer? Si vous pouvez activer votre micro? Est-ce qu'il a des problèmes ou quoi?
Je l'appelle pour vérifier, hein, Mao. Je l'appelle pour vérifier.
Mais on n'entend pas là.
Je l'appelle pour vérifier.
On n'entend pas du tout. Hein. Et qu'est-ce qu'on fait là? Moi, je ne le vois même pas. Hein.
Bonjour, Mamadou. Nous sommes en attente pour Monsieur Aliou.
Oui.
Oui,
Oui.
un moment. Okay, so maintenant, il y a le dernier personne à présenter sur cette panel.
Oui, mais on ne l'entend pas.
Alors, non, pas de souci. Je crois que c'est possible d'avoir Boukeni de faire ses remarques maintenant et quand Aliou est revenu, nous pouvons permettre de parler. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez?
OK.
Oui?
OK. OK.
Parfait. For everyone in the group, while we're waiting for Aliou, we may turn to Bukini a bit early just to start with some of his closing remarks. And I also want to remind everybody that the link to the narrative document is in the chat. So please feel free to go to the chat and leave your comments and respond. Pour les tout qui parlent français, nous avons un link à notre document de narrative de mouvement en chat. S'il vous plaît, de commenter là. Maintenant, Boukeni, mon ami, c'est votre temps pour présenter vos remarques. Merci.
Voilà, merci beaucoup, Davina. Bonjour à tout le monde. It's very good to see how multilingual this forum is and really representing all the corners of Africa. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for the wonderful 3-day forum that was really rich of information and knowledge sharing and really the connection. Of course, there's always the way to connect online, and really what we are seeing here is indicative of how those connections can be possible. So my name is Boukeni, and I work for Free the Slaves as Executive Director, and I was given a very small task of trying to maybe share some closing remarks, even though it's not closing because there is another speaker who's going to come after this, but just wanted to share, a few thoughts. I won't take too much of your time, but maybe 2 or 3 things. One is what we have seen all, through, during the 3 days, starting the day before yesterday and today, is really, what we can come up to conclude that the fight against modern slavery, forced labor, human trafficking, and child labor is ongoing, and it won't end to today or tomorrow, even though from the SDG, we know that the line to eradicate modern slavery, child labor is next year. And as Ms. Grace Banya have said, that it will be almost impossible to draw some conclusion as to answer to the question whether we have effectively end child labor around the world. So it also calls for cooperation, engagement with everybody, as also one of the speakers here also said. That the fight against forced labor, modern slavery, child labor, and human trafficking will not be all. We will really engage everybody, from government to survivors, to local communities, civil society, journalists, academics. And that is what we have seen during these 3 days, how the different idea and thought are coming together to explore the complexity of the issue that also requires the complexity of the responses. That one. And then second, I think we have seen during the 3 days some very amazing and inspiring examples from the Survival Leadership Academy to the research, to some of the key partnerships between government and civil society, and between government and survivors, and between civil society and everybody else. So it really shows really how some of the great work is being done everywhere, from Eastern Africa to West Africa, throughout other part of the region. So what we are seeing here is how strength, how helpful the partnership model is, and really on these many things that are required to be put in place as we want to fight modern slavery, as united. And three, it also during the 3 days, what we have seen is really the issue is what Africa has been struggling with. Justice sector is called to, is called is really called here to examine itself and see how really it can come to really help this whole fight against modern slavery. And what we have seen is that there are part of really good examples can be highlighted, but there is also other parts that they're still struggling, and so many issues from really the capacity of the judiciary, the corruption that is really hampering all these effort, and so on. And we need to come together to make sure the justice system plays its role in this whole ecosystem or framework of fight against modern slavery. But also, last but not least, really, as we have seen, all these good ideas from government to civil society through survivors, all effort that being done, but still not enough. And we need, and one of the question was, how do we do this without resources? And we have seen that the resources are a big issue as well. You don't expect only the government to put. The government has so many priorities, and they are willing to put this also as part of their priorities, but also they need resources. Civil society, also the same. Survivors need resources. Academics, journalists, everybody need resources. So I think this is what this forum was meant to explore all those complexities and the responses and ideas and struggles and everything, and then come to realize, what do we need now going forward? Now, going forward, it is very imperative that we strengthen some of the areas where we see we can do well, and this is about partnership and cooperation. We have seen through different models that this is one of the strengths that we can bring here. How do we partner in a way that is strategic and effective? How do we cooperate? But also, most importantly, how do we coordinate? As you have seen from west to east of Africa and everywhere, there are so many things that are happening. Great effort, great example, inspiring from everybody. But how do we coordinate in a way that we see what are the gains that we are making in the fight against modern slavery? So it is quite a lot, but really I'm very grateful on behalf of Free the Slaves and the team for doing this. Now, the forum is not a Free the Slaves forum. It's your forum. It is your space. And we've been very pleased to see how the space is growing, to engage everybody, government, businesses, survivors, NGOs, academic, everybody alike, and even independent. And that is what is beauty, what is really beauty about this, to make sure the space is as inclusive as possible, can bring all the view, irrespective of the differences or these disagreements, but let's bring them. So we are like a big tent that is able to accommodate everybody and feel comfortable and free to share and learn and cooperate and do all of that. So thank you so much, to all of you for the wonderful discussions that we have. Now, where do we go from here? In 2025, next year, we will be organizing the Global Forum. This is now all of these regions that have been come to the forum, that we've been organizing forum in the Caribbean, Latin America, the North America region, the European region. Now we're gonna soon organize the next month the Asia Forum, and then later in the year the Middle East and North Africa Forum. Some of these are happening online and others are happening in person. So the idea of the Global Forum is now all of us to come together, and it will be in person. It will be in person. We already have 2 proposals that are very strong, but I'm not gonna disclose them now because I don't wanna cause too much excitement, and then we're gonna jump on the sea and on the ship, etc. But no, we will let you know. We have 2 strong, very competing proposals, which I think will, with the team, we're gonna have time to deliberate, and we'll let you know. Probably this is gonna be in October next year. So because we have plenty of time. And the idea is now to bring all of this. But what we do from end of the year to October will be organizing. And we are having in May the European Forum, regional forum that is co-hosted by the government of Belgium. It is really to really dig deep on the issues of modern slavery in Europe. So we just decide to squeeze the European Forum in between, but this will come in October, but we'll let you know. Now, the idea is to make sure that, all of this, what we are hearing from the regions, really what this means to the movement, what this means to the fight against modern slavery, and what kind of a commitment do we need from each other. Everybody alike. Don't underestimate your power. Don't underestimate what you can do. Everybody, from government to survivors, let's put together some of the commitment and work through that, which is very important. So I will end here. I won't take too much time, but really to say how grateful we are as organizers of the forum to serve you, to come and really make sure this space is for you and you can utilize it in a way that you can collaborate, partner, and learn and share and engage and mobilize. So we're happy that this is happening. I want also to thank our sponsors, without whom we could not have the resources to put together these forums in all the regions. Of course, Freedom Fund, really kudos and thank you. Walk Free, ILO, and really other funders. So really, thank you so much for your support. But I want also to thank the organizing committee or the planning committee that really took time to really put together a great structure, a great agenda to really make sure these discussions can come. But really, huge heart and huge kudos to the team led by Giselle and Jacqueline and Aline and Bernadette and Issa and and other colleagues here for really make sure the logistics are on point, everything is there, so we can have a very wonderful discussions. If you don't mind, just stop sharing for a moment. I'm almost done. I just stop sharing the screen, so I don't want to give the impression that I am presenting on what you're saying. If someone can stop sharing just a little bit, and then you come back. Yes. Thank you. And then also try to thank our interpreters. I cannot really, stress enough how it is challenging, but really we have very wonderful interpreters doing wonderful and marvelous job in the interpretation from both both English and French. And also thanks to Davina, I didn't know she was speaking this many languages. Well, I only knew she was speaking Chinese and Arabic and English, but I'm very surprised to see she also do very well in French. So really, thank you so much. I want to yield back to the moderator, and then to continue the forum. But really, very much appreciated. We are very grateful for all the presentations, everything that went into to make this a successful forum that really more galvanize and mobilize more than 150 participants. So asante, merci, and shukran, everything in between. Thank you.
Thank you, Bukeni. And one thing that everyone here should know is not only is Bukeni such a champion and a great representative of the African region in all of his work, but he's also the reason these regional forums exist and have persisted and will continue to persist. So he's really been such an amazing advocate for the regional voice in the anti-trafficking movement, and in general, really changing how the UN views, all civil society, NGO, and business involvement in this process. So he's a huge force of nature, and we're all so proud of him for his representation of this area, this region, and this issue. So thank you, Bukeni. And then maintenant, Monsieur Mamadou, je crois que Monsieur Aliou est prêt à présenter. Oui, Monsieur Aliou, vous pouvez présenter maintenant. Ensuite, je crois que vous pouvez, Mamadou, je vais passer le contrôle de forum à vous pour la présentation finale de Monsieur Aliou. Ensuite, nous pouvons terminer après son présentation.
Yes. Oui, beaucoup. Merci, Davina. Bon, on va y aller. Aliou, on est très, très en retard. Si vraiment vous pouvez le faire, pas en 10 minutes, mais en 3 minutes, maximum 5 minutes. OK, Aliou?
Rapidement. Vous avez vu mon écran?
Non,
Pas encore. Nous ne pouvons pas voir votre écran maintenant.
OK.
Vous devrez la partager, je crois.
Oui, je vais partager l'écran.
Voilà, c'est arrivé maintenant.
C'est arrivé maintenant.
Voilà. OK. Vous pouvez y aller là.
Voilà. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Donc, je suis un peu en retard, je m'excuse parce que je suis sur un autre atelier avec le ministère de la Justice sur les industries extractives. Voilà, donc je vais aller droit au but par rapport à la présentation sur l'engagement des survivantes de la traite et de l'exploitation sexuelle en Afrique de l'Ouest. Voilà, donc comme introduction, en tout cas, le contexte est important. La traite et l'exploitation des personnes, sont des violations graves des droits humains qui effectuent qui affectent des milliers de femmes et d'enfants en Afrique de l'Ouest. L'engagement des survivantes est crucial pour mettre fin à ces pratiques et pour soutenir la réhabilitation et la réintégration des victimes. Je l'ai fait en 4 étapes. La première étape, c'est la sensibilisation et l'éducation. Et l'objectif de la sensibilisation, c'est d'informer, éduquer le public, les autorités et les communautés sur les relations, les réalités de la traite et l'exploitation sexuelle. Les actions claires, c'est le témoignage public. Les survivantes partagent leurs expériences lors des conférences, ateliers et événements médiatiques pour sensibiliser les conséquences de la traite. Programme les programmes d'éducation, participation à des sessions éducatives dans les écoles et les communautés pour prévenir la traite et en expliquant les mécanismes de traite et comment se protéger. L'exemple, c'est la campagne de Voice of Survivors en Côte d'Ivoire, où des survivants partagent leurs histoires à travers des médias locaux. L'étape 2, la réhabilitation et le soutien psychosocial. L'objectif, c'est d'offrir un soutien historique aux survivants pour les aider à surmonter leur traumatisme et à reconstruire leur vie. Les actions clés, c'est conseil et thérapie, accès à des services de thérapie individuelle et de groupe pour aider les survivants à traiter les expériences traumatisantes. La formation professionnelle, il faut mettre en place des programmes de formation dans divers domaines pour favoriser l'autonomie économique et la réinsertion professionnelle des survivants. Les activités de groupe, renforcer des liens sociaux et de l'entraide par des activités communautaires et des groupes de soutien. Exemple, le programme de réhabilitation de l'OIM qui offre des services complets de soutien psychologique et de formation. Ça, c'est en Sierra Leone. Donc, il y a l'étape 3, le plaidoyer et l'influence politique. L'objectif, c'est de promouvoir des politiques et des lois efficaces pour combattre la traite des personnes et protéger les victimes. Les actions clés, la collaboration avec les ONG, des gouvernements. Travailler avec des organisations locales et internationales pour influencer les politiques. Participer à des comités consultatifs. Les survivants apportent leur perspective unique au groupe de travail et au comité sur la traite. Des campagnes de plaidoyer, organiser des campagnes pour demander des lois plus strictes à une meilleure mise en œuvre des politiques existantes. Exemple de l'initiative Survivor Speak Out, donc au Ghana, donc où des survivants collaborent avec des décideurs politiques pour améliorer la législation anti-traite. Et en étape 4, l'initiative communautaire et réseautage. Donc, dans le cadre de notre programme, à la fin, je vais un peu expliquer cela. Renforcer la résilience des communautés et soutenir les nouvelles victimes à travers des réseaux de survivants. Les actions clés, c'est la création des réseaux de survivantes, élaborer des groupes de soutien où les survivantes peuvent partager des ressources et des expériences. Le programme de mentorat des nouvelles victimes par des survivants expérimentés pour les guider dans leur processus de réhabilitation. Projet communautaire, participation à des projets locaux visant à renforcer l'autonomie économique et sociale des femmes. L'exemple, c'est le réseau des survivants leaders au Nigeria qui connecte les survivantes et des ressources et des opportunités économiques. Voilà, donc enfin, la 5e étape, la formation et développement des compétences. L'objectif, c'est de fournir aux survivantes les compétences nécessaires pour leur réinsertion professionnelle et leur autonomie. Les actions clés, mettre en place un programme de formation professionnelle, offrir des formations.
Allô, est-ce que tu permets?
Oui, bien sûr.
Oui, mais je veux, comme on le voit là, que tu ne lises pas parce que comme là, on est fatigué là. Et puis, il y a déjà eu la clôture. Et comme on voit bien, si tu peux le résumer, juste.
Oui, 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 c'est pour justement résumer. J'ai fini.
Excuse-moi. Voilà.
J'ai déjà presque fini par rapport au programme de formation professionnelle, offrir une formation dans des divertis. Donc, ça, c'est justement pour l'engagement des survivants dans la situation. Parce que, comme vous le savez, avec ce programme avec Prise des Slaves, il y a au moins 3 groupes de survivants qui ont été mis en place et qui sont en train de participer, même qui ont participé au dernier retour en famille lors des séances de formation au niveau de Akure. Et cela, en tout cas, porte ses fruits. Et je pense que par rapport aux résultats, les chiffres ont été partagés. Je pense que lors de la clôture du projet, les chiffres ont été partagés et que c'est des données qui sont protégées. C'est vrai que nous avons la base de données.
On ne t'entend plus, hein? On ne t'entend plus, Aliou.
Allô, oui?
Voilà.
Voilà, donc je disais que je n'ai pas mis les données, justement parce que les données qui existent dans le cadre de ce projet, avec la collaboration de Freeze and Slave, donc, ont été partagées. Et je pense qu'on ne doit pas perdre du temps pour partager ces données parce que ça existe déjà et c'est partagé. Donc, je pense qu'au-delà de ça, c'est ce que je voulais dire. Partager avec vous sur ce panel. Et dire que nous allons continuer en tout cas les contacts avec les groupes de survivants qui ont été les groupes de soutien qui ont été mis en place et nous allons vers le réseautage de ces groupes de soutien pour pouvoir en tout cas gérer la question des survivantes. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Aliou, et toutes mes excuses de t'avoir bousculé là. Voilà. Davina,
c'est ma faute.
Non, c'est pas grave. Merci beaucoup pour vos présentations. Et maintenant, je crois que nous sommes finis. Merci à vous.
Merci beaucoup.
Everyone.
Merci.
This has been a lovely presentation and a lovely forum.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
And please participate in the forum narrative available in the chat. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Allô, oui. Oui, j'ai pu rentrer. J'organise un atelier là, de consultation là.